Hello everybody, we're live. Except we're not all live. We've had a bit of a technical issue. I was just chatting with Russ when everything's gone dead on his end. Unfortunately, he's had a power outage in his neighbourhood. I'm hoping that Russ will be back with me before the end of the stream. Yeah, in the meantime, we shall soldier on. Tonight, we're going to be doing a deep dive into dwarven emotions, memories, and stress. I can particularly talk about how to keep your dwarfs happy. It's a speciality of mine. So, let's get straight into it. And if Russ's power returns, I'll take a quick BRB and we'll bring Russ in. Yeah, it's a shame we haven't got Russ, because Russ comes at things from exactly the opposite angle to me. I manage my dwarf stress by focusing on keeping my dwarfs happy, and there's a lot of science behind that. Toadie's dug into his code for me and fact-checked some of my findings. I did a big science experiment on it a couple of years ago. Russ comes at it from entirely the opposite angle. He uses an old piece of code, which Toadie refers to as battle hardness, which prevents his dwarfs from feeling anything, including stress. But I'm going to talk about how to keep your dwarfs happy. The unnatural philosophy of dwarves, indeed. So let's have a look at the dwarfs I've got here. This is my current fortress that I've been playing on my own stream. And we've got a population of 46 and almost half of them are ecstatic. But we've got 2 of them that are unhappy. And if we have a look, so we can find out who the unhappy dwarfs are with the filter button here. And I've got 2 unhappy dwarfs. Now, one of I know the reasons behind both of these 2. Russ stresses his dwarfs so much that they don't need to be happy. Indeed, indeed. Yeah, jack of all trades here. He was happy up until very recently. I made a bit of a mistake. I got jack of all trades to geld my war dogs for me, and the war dogs were not very happy about that. So he's had a little bit of a fight recently, and that's been upsetting him. And Oak Tree is a necromancer, and that causes specific problems. Necromancers and any dwarfs that don't eat or drink or sleep, you're going to have difficulties in keeping them happy. But yeah, we've got a few tricks up our sleeve to manage those. So let's start off by explaining where the war dogs lost their bounce. Indeed. Let's start off by giving you a bit of background into where I've got the knowledge from and what I'll be referencing, so you can follow along with some of this if you want to. So on the Bay 12 forum, let me just drag this across. This is I call it a white paper, a write-up that I did into a bunch of experiments that I carried out into the experiences that dwarves have, how that translates into emotions, and how their emotions then get embedded into their memory, and how that memory is transferred to stress. And a little trick I found for recovering unhappy dwarfs, which I've been doing here. I did have Jack of all trades was up in the orange. So yes, this is quite an extensive piece of research I did. I'll post that in chat in case anybody wants to follow along with what I'm looking at. So it started off with an in-depth experiment. I did all these on stream as well. I ran 3 fortresses. All 3 fortresses ran for 7 years. All 3 fortresses had at least 300 dwarfs. And across those 3 fortresses, I did a sample test of dwarfs that had been in the fortress for at least 2 years, and I looked at what was in their thoughts. Now, this is the write-up, and the experiments are all a little bit old. They were carried out on the 47.04 version of Dwarf Fortress, but the vast majority of that write-up is still relevant. But as a result, there were some changes made to the stress system. Some of the mechanics that I found that weren't working as intended have been addressed since, and I'll be talking about those as well. So, the first thing to understand is when a dwarf has an experience. So let's pick this dwarf here. He's my carpenter. What are you up to? You're about to go forge something. What have you been doing? You're hanging out in a tavern there, I think that is. Yes, Bluck here is socialising in a tavern. So Bluck is currently having an experience. Bluck is having the experience of socialising. Bluck will have a thought about that. Now, if we have a look under recent thoughts, we can see what's been going through Bluck's thoughts recently. There'll be a thought about socialising that'll pop up soon. There's no one for us to socialise with, so it's not going to be a particularly strong experience. But yes, with every experience that a dwarf has, it creates an emotion that's related to it. And each emotion... oh, actually, this is my weaponsmith's guild. Yeah, they come and socialise in the weaponsmith's guild. So yes, I've got some weapon traps in here just to improve the value of the room. Each emotion has a certain strength, and you can find the strengths of the emotion on the wiki page if you look up emotions. And that then transfers into their memory. So a dwarf has 3 types of memory. Let me find somebody who... Oh no, this dwarf has got all 3 types of memory. So recent thoughts, anything that's not in pink is just a short-term memory. So Bluck here has felt satisfied at work. That's her most recent thought. It's in her short-term memory. And then there's the long-term memories. These are the things that she's been thinking about, and it's the long-term memories that are most impactful on their stress. Now, we have a recorded history of all of her long-term memories, but they won't all still be relevant. Some of them then get transferred into their core memory, and the core memory changes their personality. So Bluck, we can see, is now often inflamed by hatred and easily develops hatred towards things, which has been strengthened after experiencing trauma. But she finds helping others very emotionally rewarding, also after experiencing trauma. So this is now a core memory rather than a long-term memory. So we've got those 3 different types of memory: the short-term memory, the long-term memory, and the core memory. And to understand how to manage stress, let me find somewhere where I can draw things. Over here we've got a nice blank bit. I'll just zoom out a bit I'm going to use this as my artist's palette. Right. So a dwarf has three types of memory. Sorry. Short term. Let's draw this out. So we've got short term memories. We've got their long term memories. And then we've got their core memories. A dwarf has 8 memory slots. So if we draw these as 8 slots, one, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They also have 8 long-term slots. Oh, Russ's powers returned. Excellent. Russ, shall we bring you into the stream? Hang on one second. I tell you what I'll do. I'll just go onto the BRB screen while I bring Russ back. That's good. We were expecting it to take a lot longer than that. I'll be back with you in just a moment.
Talking about the memories, huh?
Indeed. Russ is here.
Hello.
So, Russ, shall we start by introducing you?
Hello. I'm Russ Money. I play niche games like Dwarf Fortress, like everyone else here does. Big into roleplay and Space Station 13, but I've dabbled in Dwarf Fortress probably, I want to say, 15 years or so.
Yeah, you're a long-term player, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I've loved this game.
And so today we're talking about how to keep your dwarfs unstressed. Now, you and I, we approach this from 2 different angles, don't we?
I think so, yeah.
Because I keep my dwarfs very happy, and you've got a different approach.
I usually just give them the bare minimum for them not to throw a tantrum, and I'm pretty happy with that. And just let them experience the horrors of the world so they slowly just become hardened and they don't feel anything to anything anymore.
So that is due to an old piece of code called the Battle Hardness Code, sometimes referred to as Dwarven PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And not something that I'm very familiar with. So I'm glad you could make it, because I would like to know. I have actually tried to repeat this, or to try and get it to work in my own fortresses, and I've never really succeeded. So I'm interested to see how you do this. Now, I know you've only just got power back. Is there any chance that while I'm going through how to use the happiness mechanic, is there any chance that you could boot up and we could maybe come and have a look at one of your fortresses?
I only have one fortress. I can't say it's too old. It's only about 4 years old, and I barely have a military running. I mean, if you just want to see my neat fortress, that's cool. But
yeah, that's cool.
All right, yeah, sure. Otherwise, I mean, it depends on like how you run your military, or at least that's how. Because most of my stuff, I guess, going to be anecdotal.
That's
but
fine.
A lot of my military dwarves are the ones they're all obviously battle hardened. Even the dwarves that I put on, say, a schedule where they're on and off a few months, they don't become as battle hardened as the other dwarves that I sully out to meet every goblin fortress that comes to my fortress. And they just eventually get used to all the death and carnage that they really don't feel anything anymore. But they're not tantruming. They're not the dwarves that are too upset, I guess I should say.
Yeah. So I was just explaining That how much do you know about the emotion and memory system, or is this news to you too, Russ?
A lot of it is news to me. I was brushing up on it before our stream today, and I was learning about the whole that there's 8 short memory and 8 long-term memory slots, and it was really interesting.
That's right. And then the third type of memory is the core memory. And the core memory system has an unlimited number of spots, but I don't think I've ever seen a dwarf with more than 5 core memories.
I've never really dove into, I guess, the mind of the dwarf. I had no idea these memories existed, but it makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a very deep dive. It actually took me 3 weeks just to parse all of the data.
Oh, wow.
Very much helped by my co-streamer and IT gremlin, Mia, who helped me to put all of the data that I collected from the dwarfs onto spreadsheets before I wrote this up. So yes, there was quite a lot of data collection went into this. So it was a sample of, I forget now, was it 200 or 300 dwarfs? Let me see. I did write it up.
Goodness. So when you normally have your military running, do you normally just have dwarves that just train around the clock, or do you actually give them breaks?
Oh, I put everybody in the military, but I shall explain why I do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. So I took a sample of 300 dwarfs across 3 fortresses. All of the dwarfs have been in the fortress for more than 2 years. So they'd had chance to form long-term memories. Mm-hmm. And so what I'd found, and I built this on the shoulders of others, so this is not all my own original research. I'd taken everything that people had written about the emotion system, everything that people had written about the memory system, and tested out some theories about how that affected stress. I was lucky enough to be able to run my my results past Toady. It was actually in one of Blind's streams. Blind was hosting a question and answer session with Toady, and I've been able to put a bunch of questions to Tarn in advance. So Tarn got his code out and checked some stuff for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so this is what we found out. So with the short-term memories, they are constantly being updated. So if you look at a dwarf's recent thoughts, you'll see that there's loads of them. There's tons of recent thoughts. If you follow a dwarf around, you'll see that their thoughts are constantly changing. We'll have a look at some of that in a moment. It's just I'm conscious that this is a live fort and you never know what's going to happen. So I'll go through the theory first, and then we'll have a look at some dwarf behaviour live on screen. So a dwarf comes brand new to your fortress, and their memories are completely empty. They walk onto the edge of the map, and then the first thing that they experience is it's raining. So they have a thought that relates to the rain, and that's going to fill one of their memory slots. So that thought has a certain weighting associated with it. It could be that they are dejected because of the rain, or maybe they're annoyed because of the rain. And annoyed is less impactful than dejected. And dejected is less impactful than dismayed, as an example. There's a whole range of these. They're all available on the wiki.
Oh, yeah.
The dwarf...
You can tell when a dwarf is really affected by it.
Yeah. The dwarf then walks towards your fortress. And as it's walking towards your fortress, he spots a corpse on the ground. And he has a thought about that corpse. So there's an emotion created. That emotion creates a short-term memory. And What happens is the as that memory, for that memory to be created, as soon as the emotion is experienced, it then checks to see, is there a memory of that type in short term? And it says, no, there's no corpse memories in my short term, so I'll add one. It then walks further towards your fortress, and he comes across a fine door. And so the memory system, there's an emotion about that. Satisfied seeing a fine door. Satisfied is quite a low level emotion, quite a low strength emotion. But it does a check to say, has this dwarf got anything in their short-term memory about fine doors? Now, the memories are grouped, and I'm not exactly sure which bits of furniture count within the same group, or whether all furniture is in one group. So if they see a fine trap, is that the same as a fine door? I don't know. But our dwarf has experienced the rain and has seen a corpse. He's not seen a fine door or any other form before, so we'll fill up another slot with a short-term memory about that. He then goes further into the fortress, and he then finds himself a bedroom and has a bit of a snooze. So the dwarfs has an experience related to their bedroom. If they've got a room of their own. Now, this could be if they've slept on the floor, that's going to be an unhappy memory of some description. If they sleep outside, they really don't like sleeping outside. They really don't like sleeping on the floor, but it's better inside than outside. And they're not so keen on sleeping in a dormitory, but if a dormitory is really fancy, it can still be overall positive. But if they've got their own room, that's where you're going to get the strongest of emotions. So we're going to say that our dwarf has a bedroom ready for them, and that bedroom is a bedroom like a personal palace. And if you've got a good engraver, you can get a bedroom like a personal palace by giving them a 3x3 room that's all engraved. So he has an experience associated with the bedroom, sleeping in a bedroom like a personal palace. And it's a blissful experience, which is quite strong. So we look at the short-term memory and see, has this dwarf had an experience of that type before? And no, the dwarf hasn't had that experience. So it fills one of his memory slots. Now, these memories are of differing strengths. That's something to remember. We'll reflect on that in a moment. The dwarf then goes out and does some work. He's got nothing in his memory about work, and he's satisfied at work, so that fills another memory slot. He has something to eat, and it's a fine meal. So nothing in his memory about fine meals, so that takes a slot. Then let's say he puts on a piece of clothing and he hasn't had an experience before about putting on some clothing, so that fills a slot. Then after work he goes and socializes in a tavern, and he's got nothing in his memory about socializing in a tavern, so that fills a slot. His short-term memory slots are now full. Let's say that he now goes out into the rain. Now, this is where the strength of the memories become important. So to reflect on that, let's show the strength of memories by the height of the bar. So when he came in, he experienced the rain, and let's say that he wasn't too bothered about it. He was just annoyed by the rain. So that's a reasonably strong but not terribly strong emotion. He then saw a corpse and was completely traumatized by it. So that's the strongest emotion he can get. And he then saw a fine door, which he was quite pleased about, but that's quite a weak emotion. He then was blissful about sleeping in a fabulous bedroom like a personal palace, and that's a really strong emotion. He's then satisfied at work. Well, that's quite weak. He's put on some clothes, and let's say for this dwarf, that's quite a weak emotion as well. Maybe the clothes weren't so good, or maybe he's not particularly bothered about fine clothes. He's eaten a nice meal, and that's a reasonably weak emotion. Maybe it wasn't exactly his favourite meal, but it was okay. It was a good quality meal. And what was our last one? He's socialized, yeah. And let's say that he's made a new friend, and he's really pleased about making a new friend. So we'll put that about that strength. So the next thing is he goes outside again and he experiences some rain. What happens now is it checks the groups. If he's experienced rain before, then it'll check the strength of the emotion last time and decide whether the emotion that he's having this time is stronger or weaker than last time. Well, last time he was annoyed by the rain, and this time we're going to say that he's dejected by the rain. So that's a good bit stronger. So his old memory gets overwritten by his new memory. Now, if his memory slots weren't full and he has a second emotion about the rain, it still overwrites it. It doesn't fill an empty slot. As long as there's something already in his short-term memory, it'll either overwrite it or it'll discard it. But then if he has another thought about something completely different, let's say he watches a performance and he really enjoys the performance. He finds the performance awesome, and it's quite a strong emotion. So he hasn't got any thoughts about having a performance in his short-term memory. And so it looks for what's the weakest memory. And it doesn't matter whether the weakest memory is a stronger emotion than the current new one. The weakest one's going to get overwritten. So we'll say that this is quite a strong thought about the performance. So it's going to overwrite his satisfied at work. Now let's say that his next experience is he applies for a guild hall, and we accept his guild hall and then satisfy the demand for a guild hall. And he has a very strong reaction to that, gives him a really happy thought. So it'll then look at the memories. Are there any memories related to guild halls? No, there aren't. So which is there an empty slot? No, there isn't. So which is his weakest short-term memory? Let's say it's this one here. So that one then gets overwritten with the stronger thought about him experiencing really happy thoughts about the guild hall being satisfied. Then let's say his next thought is he's involved in some sort of conflict and experiences a trauma. So again, there's nothing in his short-term memory about trauma. So it doesn't matter whether it's a strong or weak memory. It's going to overwrite the weakest with probably a very strong emotion about it. He's probably afraid while experiencing trauma. And so that'll overwrite his weakest short-term memory. And then let's say the next thing that he experiences is, let's say he's out in the rain again. And this time, he's dismayed by the rain again, or he's annoyed by the rain again. It does a check and looks at it and says, well, there's already rain there. And this time, the memory about the rain isn't as strong or is equal to the memory he already has. So that memory is going to get discarded. He then does some work and he's satisfied at work. And it's a very weak emotion, but it looks to see, is there any satisfied at work in here? There isn't. So it looks for which is the weakest emotion. It's this one. This is a stronger emotion than being satisfied at work, but he hasn't got a satisfied at work, so that gets overwritten. And then a new memory is added, which is satisfied at work. Then let's say he has... give me something else that a dwarf can experience.
He ate a masterpiece roast.
He's eaten a masterpiece roast. And we do a check on their memory. He did previously eat a fine meal, but it wasn't a masterpiece. And it's since been overwritten. So he has quite a strong thought about the fact that he's eaten a masterpiece meal. And so that overwrites his weakest memory. And let's say it's a good, strong emotion. He's absolutely delighted. It's got his favourite snail eye, finely minced masterpiece roast. So it's actually a really strong emotion about that.
So do dwarves just go around having these experiences and just
Absolutely.
collecting the strongest ones?
Yeah. So what tends to happen is you'll end up with 7 memories that are all quite strong. Because it's always the weakest one that's being overwritten. So you'll end up with a whole bunch of memories. We'll say this one gets overwritten as well. And then there'll be one memory that is constantly cycling between a really low satisfied at work and something that is stronger. And then it gets cycled again with something that's weaker and then cycle back to something that's stronger. And there's one memory that is constantly being cycled in and out. Now, that means that we've got 7 memories that are sticking because it's the other one that's being cycled. After a year, if the dwarf still has a memory that's been kicking around in his short-term memory for a year, it then tries to promote to being a long-term memory. And so let's say being in the rain, that's one of his longest-term memories, although it's not that long because it's been overwritten once since. But after a year, this being in the rain is in his short-term memory. It's then promoted to long-term, and it's something that he's now going to remember. So he now has long-term memory about being dejected in the rain, but that's going to free up a slot in his short-term memory. So we've got an empty slot now in his short-term memory. And so the next thing that he experiences, as long as it's one of the new ones, is going to take up his short-term memory. And that might mean that he's actually got 2 weaker emotions in his short-term memory. So the next thing that happens is we've got another long-term memory about seeing a corpse that he was a bit traumatized by. That's going to transfer into his long-term memory. And let's say in between he's been satisfied by work again, and that has taken over that short-term memory slot. But now he's got another free memory slot, and that free memory slot is because the thought about the corpse has gone into his long-term memory. So he's satisfied by work again, but that's discarded because it's the same as one that's already there. And then he has another thought. Let's say it's another weak memory. And this one is, let's say he's...
I'm trying to think as well.
Yeah, he reads a book. He learns something.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, he learns something. He likes learning things. So he gets a fairly weak memory about learning a thing. And he's happy about that. Then another emotion gets transferred into his long-term memory. We'll skip ahead a little ways and say that his long-term memories are all starting to get full up now. So we'll put in a copy of these here. And we'll say that his... Actually, let's leave one free because there's an important difference between these types of memories. So we'll leave that one free. And let's say that the short-term memories now will have a free slot here as well. Now, let's say he now goes out in the rain again. And, well, his memory about the rain previously is now in long term. So when he goes out into the rain, it does a check to see if there's anything about rain in his short-term memory. And there isn't anything in his short-term memory about rain. So, and he's utterly dejected about being in the rain. So that will take over one of his short-term memory slots. So now he's got two thoughts about being in the rain. He's got a short-term memory that is a very strong. It's he's dejected about being in the rain this year, and he's dwelling upon being dismayed about being in the rain last year as well. Now, if you have a look at your dwarfs' thoughts, you'll see that they're often remembering things from their long-term memory. And that has a bigger impact on their stress because they're constantly revisiting their long-term memories. They're just always churning over the long-term memories. It's more impactful than their short-term memories. And so these are the long-term memories are the ones that are causing them stress. So you're looking at trying to get as many of these short-term memories to be happy ones, so that as that one is cycling, as the weakest one cycles, you've got a better chance of the long-term memories getting the short-term memories being promoted into long-term. So now let's say that this short-term memories are being cycled, and the ones that are going to come up for promotion next are the ones that he's going to have been feeling quite frequently, and so they've been sitting in his memory for some time. A bedroom like a personal palace. Within a month of that being promoted to long term, is going to be appearing in his short term again. When he comes to his long term memory, and this tries to promote again, so which would be a year after his first one. If there's an empty slot, then it doesn't check the group first. It looks to see if there's an empty slot first. So he can end up with 2 positive thoughts about having a bedroom like a personal palace. And as long as there's a free slot there, you can end up with him having 2 long-term memories about the same thing. Now, that can be about a positive thing or a negative thing. So if they're seeing lots of corpses, they can end up with a long-term memory that's got more than one negative thought about corpses. But
I guess it's a little about luck as well, wouldn't it? If they have similar, like, negative and positive short terms.
Indeed.
And then does it weight it differently for the stronger one, or do they both, like, up for grabs to go into the long term?
So with promoting short term to long term, it's just, has the memory existed for a year? If it's existed for a year, then it'll try and promote. If it can't promote, then it's discarded and it leaves an empty slot in the short-term memory. If it can promote, then it moves to long-term and it leaves an empty slot in the short-term memory. But then that leaves us with 8 full slots in the long-term memory. And how do we get more free slots? Well, that's because some of the memories, but not all of them, can sometimes be promoted to a core memory. And there's a 1 in 3 chance whenever a dwarf revisits a long-term memory. So rain is one that can go into their core memory. So dejected by the rain, he thinks about that fairly frequently. It's bringing him down. There's a 1 in 3 chance every time he thinks about it that what that's going to do is move into his core memory. And at that point, it'll make a change to his personality. But it will also leave wrong button. It'll also leave a free slot in his long-term memory, which we would then hope to fill that with feeling blissful about a personal bedroom again.
Right.
Once they've moved into their core memory, it makes a change to their personality and they stop dwelling on it anymore. So it ceases to be something that's going to bother them in future. They're kind of done with that memory once it's changed their personality. But of course, they can have experiences relating to the same topic. But that empty slot in the long-term memory, it now depends on which thing is the longest in their long-term memory. And it could be quite a weak one. It could be that this little memory here, because there's been this constant cycling of an even weaker one, this little memory about the time he read a book, that can make it into their long-term memory. And even though it's a weak thought, it can take up one of their memory slots.
As long as it's not the last one that's being swapped out.
Indeed.
A lot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But some of these thoughts can't make it into core memory. They can't. The thoughts about their bedrooms, the thoughts about eating in a legendary dining room, thoughts about clothing and eating fine meals, those sorts of things, Tarn thought were too asinine to make a change to their personality. But rain can.
Absolutely.
Experiencing bad weather can. But yeah, they end up with... he was laughing about that when we were talking about it. About how rain is such an impactful thing that, yes, that can make a change to their core memory. But their core memory will have a variety of things, usually weather, things like trauma, seeing corpses, having babies, having a lover, getting married, that sort of thing. And yeah, these core memory slots can just fill up, and there isn't actually a limit on it. So I haven't seen a dwarf that's had more than 5 personality changes, but in theory there's no limit to how many of these how many of them you can fill up. So that's something to bear in mind, that what you can do is by minimizing the number of short-term memories that are negative, even if the ones that they experience are strong, if you can minimize the frequency of those negative experiences, so that if they get switched out to long term, they're less likely to have that slot immediately refilled. And try and have a high frequency of happy experiences, regardless of how weak that is. Then you can end up by flooding their long-term memory, so that there's less likelihood of a negative memory getting into long-term, because if all of the slots are full and there's nothing of that grouping, they'll overwrite the weakest long-term memory. So the weakest long-term memory will cycle, but fairly weak long-term memories can still hang around in there, because there's stuff being moved into core memory. So there's occasional empty slots being made in their long-term memory as well.
When a dwarf experiences something and they're checked for to add it to their short term, when they're, I guess, see if it's how strong it is, do dwarves have any kind of innate ability or like resistance to certain experiences where it doesn't become like a stronger short term? I guess an example would be, are there dwarves that don't mind the rain as much as other dwarves, where they're super sensitive about it?
Yes. So the strength of the emotion will be determined by their personality.
Okay.
So a dwarf that doesn't mind working outside is going to have a weaker negative effect from the rain than a normal dwarf. So like your first 7 dwarfs are going to be more resistant to the rain than any future dwarfs. But occasionally you'll get another dwarf that joins you that doesn't mind the outside and only grumbles. Right. I think only grumbles occasionally about inclement weather, I think is how it's put.
Having a hunter that would just be absolutely destroyed by rain seems very redundant.
Indeed. And hunting and fishing, this is one of the reasons why hunting and fishing are very detrimental. Why you end up with very stressy dwarfs when they're hunting and fishing.
Because they're just going outside and having a bad time.
Yeah. And it's a frequent experience where they're in the rain. Unless you set up in a desert. If you set up in a desert, then where there's not much rain,
none at all,
it's not going to be a problem for you. So I went through. I did with this as a theory, knowing how this mechanic worked. That was when I set up the 3 experimental fortresses to see what happened if you worked this system. So if I could avoid my dwarfs from experiencing, as far as possible, I wanted to keep negative thoughts out of their heads and try and flood them with positive thoughts. So I made sure that they all had a bedroom like a personal palace. I made sure that their dining room was legendary. You can do that just by giving them a large room. You don't even need to engrave it. I think one of my experimental fortresses, the dining room was cut into the soil. I just made it large enough, a large room with some chairs and tables, and you've got a legendary dining room. It's one of the easiest ones to meet. And all of the fortresses had a waterfall that was running down the staircase, so they were all exposed to mist. They all had time in a library. Everybody was in the military and did at least 1 or 2 months military training in a year. They all had access to masterwork clothes. Now at the time, because this is it, I carried out these experiments in an older version of Dwarf Fortress, and all they would, for their food, the only thing they took into account was whether or not they liked an ingredient. That's been changed. That's something that Toady has addressed since. So now they take into account the quality of their food, and they'll try and seek out a meal that they would prefer as well. So it used to be that if they liked plump helmets, let's pick something nice and easy. It might be that you've got a dozen masterwork finely minced plump helmet roasts, but they would still go and eat the closest thing to them, which is like a slug eye biscuit. And they might not like slug eyes. But now they actively seek out the food that they like. If it's available to them, they'll go for something that they enjoy. They all had good food. I also looked at the things which I'd seen caused bad thoughts. So none of them ever had tattered clothes. They always had a mug to drink out of. They all had some sort of meaningful work to do. And I was looking at the difference between the needs system and the thoughts and memories to see how they were interrelating. And so what I found was that, let's have a look. I'll bring my results up on screen. Because, it was... there were some really interesting things about how you could keep your dwarf's memory. How you could keep your memories full of happy thoughts. So, things that stuck in their memories. I found that 99% of the dwarfs had short-term memories of sleeping, of being blissful, sleeping in a bedroom like a personal palace. And 89% of them had long-term memories about being blissful about their bedroom. So a large personal bedroom that's fully engraved is really impactful on what their thoughts are, what they're thinking about. The dining room, 88% of the dwarfs had short-term memories about feeling blissful eating in a legendary dining room. 70% of them had long-term memories, remembering feeling blissful about their dining room. And I did that just by digging out a 15 by 20 room and saying it was a dining room. It didn't take much to impress them at all.
The darn fools believed you.
Now, an important thing about this is I never put any chairs or tables in my tavern, because a tavern is not a dining room. And so if you want your dwarves to get this buff from eating in a dining room, then you need to make sure they don't have chairs and tables anywhere else. That's quite difficult to do, because you're going to need like chairs for your various, like for your manager and for your bookkeeper.
I was about to ask, what about offices?
Yeah, you're going to need chairs in your offices. And if you want to set up a library where they can write things as well, you're going to need chairs and tables in the library as well. So
could you take a office and put it into a 15 by 20 room and say this is a legendary office then?
The way that it works in the Steam version now is there's a really strong debuff from having zones overlaid. So if they eat in a legendary office, it's still not a dining room.
Oh, okay.
So you'd have to do something amazing, like maybe have an office that's also a dining room, and make it enormous and fill it with really valuable things like fine engravings and weapon traps filled with artifact weapons.
Goodness.
Yeah. I'll show you how I have managed to get this going in my fortress, going up to the top of my fortress.
That is great information. I didn't know how important bedrooms and dining rooms actually were to their memories.
Indeed. So I have my food stockpiles somewhere near where I'm growing my food. Mm-hmm. And I don't store food anywhere else except miles away from my tavern and things. And then I put the dining room immediately below the food. So I have, and I don't have any, wherever this is in my fortress, I don't have any tables or chairs on the other side of the food stockpile, any higher than the food stockpile. So the food stockpile is somewhere near the surface. The dining room is immediately below the surface. Any chairs or tables that I have within my fortress are further away from the food stockpile. So when a dwarf's looking to eat, they go to a food source, and then they go and seek out a chair. And because the way that distance is calculated, it's the way the crow flies rather than by the path. So if they come to, there's a prepared food barrel just there. The nearest chair and table to that food barrel is down one, and across 2, across 3, across 4, across 5. So 5 tiles away is this chair, and that's going to be closer to them than anything else. So for that food barrel there, if I go directly down 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's no other tables or chairs. I do have my manager's table and chairs over here, but I've offset the manager's room so that it's further away from where my food stockpile is. Regardless of where they go in the food stockpile, this will be further away as the crow flies than the dining room, the nearest free chair and table underneath. I'm still putting down tables and chairs in this dining room. I might even make this dining room bigger because I've had to make my food stockpile bigger.
So if I were to have a food stockpile, say, inside my dining room, if there was a table and chair one tile or one Z level above, they would actually prefer to find that one than say a table that was like 3 tiles west away.
Yeah, they go for, and you'll see this when a dwarf is in a strange mood and they go to collect a lump of rock. They'll often go to the floor above or the floor below to collect a lump of rock
instead of anything near them.
Yeah, rather than walk 5 tiles to the left. They'll go all the way downstairs and collect the lump of rock that's immediately below the workshop.
So I'm learning so much.
Yeah, same thing with their food. So when they're at their food, they're looking for where's the nearest chair and table to me. Now, this isn't foolproof. I have still found dwarves going and eating in other places, but the vast majority of the time, and in my science, it was 89% of the time, they were eating in the dining room. And yet by kind of almost quarantining my food so that it's the other side of the dining room, and then spreading my fortress away so that the other tables and chairs were away from the XY rather than the Z coordinate of my dining room. So I would dig north, south, east or west before I put down a library. The library's not going to go underneath my dining room. So yeah, that's my bedrooms in this fortress. Now it's more difficult now to get a legendary engraver. Let's just find my bedrooms. So the bedrooms in this particular fortress, I just wanted to do something that was a bit different to the normal square bedrooms. So the 3x3 fully engraved with a bed, a cabinet and a chest is my usual design, but I've been doing these square bedrooms for so long I felt like doing something different. So I started doing these bigger shapes. I wanted at least 9 tiles of floor space in there to get that 3x3, and I just ended up with this pattern. But yeah, it's harder to get really good engravings these days because their engraving skill isn't improved by the smoothing skill. So even though I've got larger bedrooms, these bedrooms are not personal palaces. And if I have a look at the thoughts of one of my dwarfs, yeah, they're only fantastic bedrooms, but they're still blissful, so it's good enough.
I really like the unique shape of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted something a bit different to normal. The other thing that I found was meaningful work. Because dwarfs, meaningful work will satisfy a dwarf, but the emotion of being satisfied is really weak. So I didn't expect that there'd be strong thoughts about satisfaction. But 93% of the dwarfs were satisfied at work, but 62% of them, that had actually made it into their long-term memories. And I think this is because of the frequency. Like, they're constantly experiencing work. They're always doing something. But it needs to be a satisfying work for them. So hauling is not a satisfying job. It needs to be something they can skill up in. And it's worth noting that there are some jobs that will make a dwarf unhappy, where they'll be very dissatisfied with their work. And that is dwarfs that have got an affinity for nature. Let me just have a look at somebody. So I set up a special, nature lovers category. I've got an elvish miner here. Who else was there? Vedafalna. Yes, Vedafalna. Let's have a look at Vedafalna's characteristics. Where are you? There you are. Vedafalna's my expedition leader. So if we have a look at Vedafalna's personality, and this, you kind of got to dig into their personality to spot this. But Vedafalna can easily become absorbed in art and the beauty of the natural world. So anything that refers to a love for the natural world means that they're going to get really upset about some jobs. Does it mention anything in here? Vedafalna's got an awful lot of core memories. Due to wearing old clothes, giving birth to a boy, sorry about that, Vedafalna. Being forced to endure the decay of a spouse. Yeah, I forgot to put a tombstone on one of my coffins, and unfortunately, Vedafalna's spouse rotted in a stockpile.
Ugh. Fortress is beautiful and morbid at the same time.
Indeed. And yes, being caught in the rain in year 500, that was like when Vedafalna first appeared here, immediately got caught in the rain. And another core memory about giving birth to a girl. But yes, there's nothing in here about Vedafalna being upset by her work. doesn't feel anything about the work that she's doing at all. I must point out, in real life, Vedafalna is actually male rather than female. Yes. Oh, but she felt satisfied at work here. But yeah, there's nothing that is upsetting Vedafalna about work.
I saw that they had realized their dream of creating a masterwork.
Indeed.
And I was wondering if that was why they didn't feel anything at work, because the standard is now set so high, they've already done their magnum opus. Everything else is just worthless. Waste of time.
I think it's probably the last job that Vedafalna did was probably haul some stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but there's no negative thoughts about work, and that's because I've set up Vedafalna with some special labour. I have a nature lovers labour category, and all of my nature lovers are restricted to only doing certain things. They're not allowed to do any woodworking. My carpentry is actually dedicated to an individual. That's why I don't allow them to do that, because I want a specialist carpenter. They're allowed to do stoneworking. They're allowed to train animals and take care of animals. My doctors are specialised. They're not allowed to butcher. So wood cutting and butchery are two of the strongest negative work types that someone who likes nature can do. So if you've got somebody who has strong thoughts about nature, then you don't want them doing butchering, you don't want them doing wood cutting. Now there is an opposite to this. You can get people who hate nature so much that they would like the outside world and all of nature to be burnt to a crisp. There's some wording like that. I haven't seen it for a while, but yeah, you get some that absolutely detest the outside world. They make great butchers.
Are they the inverse of like these nature-loving dwarves?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, these things are hidden within their personality. It's something to spot. I've never noticed whether that gives them an extreme bump to their happiness at work. But
it certainly doesn't make them mad.
Indeed, yeah. And it does make them mad doing butchery and wood cutting if they have strong positive thoughts about nature. Now, I believe that means that they're happy gathering plants. And that's something...
I would imagine so, because that's how elves kind of work, right?
Yeah.
All of their stuff is grown and they pick it.
So that's what I do. I treat my nature lovers as if they were elves.
Yeah, that's exactly how it sounds like they need to be treated. I guess like something a little tricky is metalworking. Would they be against it or neutral to it, or
doesn't seem to bother them?
Okay. I figured maybe using charcoal they might be upset about it.
Yeah, they seem to be okay about that. Vedafalna's chief skill is actually as a weaponsmith.
Oh, all right then.
Yeah, no problem at all. But I keep them away from wood burning and potash making just in case.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
And make sure that they get time doing farming and plant gathering and all of that sort of thing. Cooking and brewing they seem to be okay with. I don't know about fishing, but that's because I largely avoid fishing.
That's fair.
But I allow them to do all the other crafts, anything that I might need, and they're allowed to do hauling and stuff like that too. So I set that up as a special category of jobs that are safe for nature lovers, and then I restrict my nature lovers to only doing those jobs. But I also make them my planters as well, so that they've because I think that might be something that they get a mood boost from, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I need some dedicated planters, so I'll let them do that.
Hmm.
So meaningful work is something that's important to keep them happy, making sure that they've got a job where they're learning a skill. Nobody ever skills up in hauling. Something where they can either craft something or they can improve a skill like mining or farming. That seems to be meaningful work. And then a really big hitter for another thing for keeping my dwarfs happy is military training. So my military training is, I give them the most basic of facilities. This is my barracks here. This is my front door. My front door is underground, and opens out into the outside world through some tunnels. Any fighting that's done is done underground. That way my dwarfs don't have to go out into the rain to deal with corpses and things. So yeah, I just have a barracks, which is just an empty room for them, as long as there's enough room for them to train in. And every single dwarf gets into a squad. And then I schedule my squads. So let's bring up all of my squads and have a look at their schedule. So I make sure that everyone's got 1 or 2 months worth of training. And because that means that there's going to be lots of training going on, I always schedule it for winter because there's no traders coming and going. There's less farming to be done because there's only plump helmets to harvest in winter. So winter's a bit of a quiet time. I can close my doors, close my front doors, lock them in, get everybody doing training during winter. So across the 3 months of winter, everybody gets cycled. Oh, they're on the same cycle. What about you guys? Yeah, so they're in month 11 and 12.
Great way to stay warm, too.
Yeah, indeed. They're in month 10 and 11. Military training is huge for your dwarf's happiness. So what I discovered, let's see if this is reflected in any of the dwarfs here. Who's been? We're actually just coming up to next season's training, but I know I've been given my unhappy dwarfs have had a little bit of extra military training. So let's have a look at Jack of all trades. See what you've been thinking. Yeah, he's unhappy because I made him into a gelder. And he was attacked by the I got him to geld.
What's my new job? I do what here now?
I got him gelding a war dog. I should have got the dogs gelded and then trained them, rather than trained them and then gelded them.
They're more protective as war dogs.
Yeah, but he's done this a few times. So yeah. So he's getting
poor guy had a panic attack.
Yeah, he's it's been bothering him quite a bit, but he should have some short-term memories about military training. Oh, actually, he's been hanging out in the library. No, actually, he hasn't. I would have thought, because he's one of the people who has most recently been training. I thought we might see something about that for him. Let me have a look at my necromancer. That's somebody else who's been doing military training recently. Oh, he's been hanging out in the library too. Interested after learning about formulas for certain arbitrarily large sums. whatever floats your boat.
This is how they're taxing me? Oh, interesting.
Here we go. So this is Oak Tree's most recent training session, military training. Satisfied remembering teaching kicking, and interested remembering learning about dodging. Exhilarated remembering a sparring session. So that's 3 individual happy memories about military training.
And because they're dwelling and remembering, this is one of their long terms?
Yeah.
I see.
So this is what's keeping Oak Tree sane, is a lot about his military training, because it's giving him something to dwell on. Oak Tree is a necromancer, and so he can't drink alcohol, and that's bothering him. And he doesn't eat, so that's bothering him as well. The other thing is, because he doesn't eat, that means he doesn't get a buff from a nice dining room. He doesn't sleep, so he doesn't, even though he's got a nice bedroom, he doesn't get a buff from his nice bedroom. So 2 of the key things that you can fill your dwarf's memories with, Oak Tree can't experience because he's immortal. He doesn't sleep or eat or drink, and he worries about the fact that he's not eating or drinking. So if anything, it's he's getting negatives from things where he should have positives.
The price for immortality, though.
Yeah, indeed.
He's not worrying about life and death anymore, that's for sure.
He is uneasy dwelling upon being attacked by the dead. This was another mistake I made with Oak Tree. Oak Tree was actually up in the red at one point. I've had to recover him. So
Oops.
because Oak Tree being a necromancer, there was less things I could do to keep him happy, so I put him in a squad to give him some military training, just to give him some happy thoughts about military training. I forgot that I put him in my sort of number 1 defensive squad. I've always got a squad that I give the best weapons and armor to, or the earliest weapons and armor to, so in case I need to do anything. Well, we had a bunch of monkeys walk into the base, and it's like, they're like Kias. They're coming in to steal things. They've been fighting with my guard dogs that I've got at the end of the corridor, and they were walking down the corridor. So I was like, "Oh, let's quickly get a military squad down here to come and deal with these monkeys." Well, there was only 5 monkeys, and Oak Tree killed them himself 8 times.
Oh.
And the others were killing them as well. So Oak Tree was killing these monkeys and then raising them again. And of course, because they were then undead monkeys, they didn't feel pain, they didn't get tired, they weren't afraid, and so they became much harder to kill the second time. I ended up with a whole bunch of people in hospital, and one of my chief mechanic, my best maker of mechanisms, actually died as a result of that attack. If you've got a necromancer and just one necromancer, don't put them in the army. It's not a good thing. Don't get them fighting monkeys.
So regardless that he raised them himself, they would still attack?
Yeah.
Like the other door. I see.
Yeah, they were just raised as mindless zombies and were then attacking him more.
I understand. They're not so much thralls as they are just mindless zombies that want to kill anything living.
Yeah. It was bad times. But as you can see, the military training. So yeah, I split out a separate squad to deal with the military training. So that's a little bit about their memory system, and we'll look at the memory system in action in a little bit. Let's talk about how stress works. So When a dwarf has a memory, so when they're thinking about their memories, let's pick 3 Lear here and his thoughts. So the long-term memories are the ones that are having the biggest impact on oh yes, that's right. This is 3 Lear is the child of Vedafalna and Talia, whose corpse decomposed. He's now more prone to stress as a result of that. He loved remembering talking with his father, and then he's traumatized about the fact that he was forced to endure the decay of his father. Whoops. Oh dear. But
so I know that you mentioned slightly, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but is there an alternative where they can experience something horrible like that, but become strengthened instead?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when things go to their core, it can have
they have their personality
changed, and whether that's a positive or negative change seems to be a bit random. Let's have a look and see if we can find somebody. This one finds helping others emotionally rewarding after experiencing trauma.
Okay.
So that's a good thing. That means she'll get a happy thought anytime she takes anyone to hospital. And if someone's stung by a bee, this is
absolutely harrowing.
An interesting little trick. It's handy to have beehives near a staircase. You want people to be stung by bees. When someone's stung by a bee, it doesn't upset them that they've been stung, but they'll feel the need to go to hospital. Somebody will come and collect them and will walk them to the hospital. But because they don't need any treatment, they'll just walk away. The doctor won't come to the hospital. They'll just go to the hospital and then walk away. But they'll get a happy thought about the fact that they've been helped. As long as they're a kind of person who appreciates being helped, they'll get a happy thought from that. And anybody who finds helping others emotionally rewarding will also get a happy thought about the fact that they've been able to help somebody in need. Sometimes it'll be reflected as they've rescued somebody.
The life-threatening bee sting. Maybe the dwarf is allergic. We don't know.
We don't know. Yep, but they rescued somebody from that bee sting and walked them to hospital.
What I do know now is what you've told me is when they go to see the doctor for a bee sting and the doctor doesn't apply a bandage, I'm just going to now imagine the doctor kisses their boo-boo and then leaves.
Yeah, the doctor doesn't even turn up.
Yep. Boo-boos, you're fine. Get out of
here. Yeah. But so the way that the memory system interacts with the stress system, there is a score that is associated with your dwarf's happiness. I call them stress points because I don't know what they're actually called in code, but we'll call them stress points for want of something else.
Right.
When they have an unhappy thought, it adds to their stress points. So it raises the score on their stress. So she's uneasy about being unable to acquire something for too long. That's just added some points onto her stress. But anytime she has a positive thought, content after sleeping in a fantastic bedroom, that subtracts from her stress score. And the strength of the emotion, and whether it's a short-term memory or a long-term memory, affects how big that stress score is, like how much that's adding to their stress score or subtracting from their stress score. And their personality comes into play as well. So have we got anybody who's brave? I don't remember seeing anyone in this fortress who's brave. There's 3 things to look for if you're looking for dwarves that are resilient, naturally resilient to traumatic experiences. So if you want a dwarf to join your military, or you want somebody to go and work in the rain, there's things you can look for. How brave a dwarf is will affect how fast their stress goes up. So, all things being equal, a dwarf that feels dejection should have the same number of points added to their stress. But if they're brave, it'll be less points added to their stress. They'll have a percentage modifier added, compared to a dwarf that's fearful in the face of danger. Their stress will jump up much faster than a dwarf that is brave to the point of being foolhardy. And then there's how their stress will come down. Their stress naturally tends towards 0. So whether they're happy or they're sad. So negative stress, positive stress. It will always drift back towards 0. There's a piece of code that determines that. And the how calm they are, whether they're calm or they're anxious, will determine how fast their stress comes back down once it's been raised. So a nervous dwarf will dissipate their stress more slowly than a calm dwarf. And then the other one of the 3 categories is what their thoughts about stress are. So this dwarf can handle stress. You can also get impervious to stress. And then, let's see, 3 Leah, you had... you don't handle stress well. So there's one that's really extreme, and I can't remember how it's phrased. Basically falls apart under stress, and this is to do with whether it's almost like a break point, how much stress they can take before their stress causes them to go berserk or insane, before it actually has that negative effect. To use a RimWorld example, it's like the break point in RimWorld.
Mm-hmm.
Some pawns in RimWorld will have a lower threshold than others, and so this is kind of like a threshold. This dwarf now will go berserk more easily on the same amount of stress points. So he's not going to be red-faced for as long before he goes berserk, compared to another dwarf that might sit at a red face for much longer, and you might be able to recover another dwarf easier than you could recover this dwarf.
I do love that this dwarven child apparently lives a fast-paced life.
Indeed. He doesn't mind being outdoors, at least not for a time. Interesting to see that. So he's going to be less affected by the rain. Mind you, it doesn't say anything about inclement weather. But yeah, I presume that's wrapped up in that. I know something that Tarn said he did in the update that followed my original experiments and write-up was that he introduced dwarves that were more tolerant to bad weather and being outdoors.
Thank goodness.
Indeed. But I imagine that this is now being balanced by him not handling stress well. And because that's a turnaround, he probably used to handle stress well. And now he doesn't, because I let his dad decay in a stockpile. Whoops.
Casual things you could just say in Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, indeed. So other things that I discovered, and some things to kind of quell some myths. Waterfalls. I was really surprised about mist generators. Oh God, chat calling me a monster. Sal, you monster. Oh, that's Vedafalner. It was Vedafalner's spouse who rotted in a stockpile. Whoops. Oh, nervous wreck. Yes, that's the one. Becomes completely helpless in stressful situations and cracks easily under pressure. Indeed.
But please, dwarves, why? Why do you get so upset about rain? But other waterfalls that we've created for you, they are the best thing ever. Like, it's still water just coming crashing down on you.
Well, that's something that a lot of people think, that a waterfall is the best happiness creator. I found that wasn't true. So
Really?
I had, in my experimental fortresses, I had a waterfall that went down the main staircase. So every dwarf walked past that waterfall every other day or so. So it was very, very frequent. But less than 25% of dwarfs had anything about the waterfall in their long-term memory. So there was nobody who dislikes a waterfall, but it just didn't stick. Despite the fact that the ones that liked it were relieved by the waterfall, which is a reasonably high emotion, but giving them satisfying work and a nice bedroom and a nice dining room was way more impactful. So 89% for a bedroom, 70% for a dining room, 62% for being satisfied at work. Military training was by far and away the biggest of the impacts. 93% of dwarfs, so this has just given them 1 or 2 months military training in a year, and that was without armor or weapons, and they didn't have any particular skills, and they weren't doing any fighting. They were just getting a month or 2 of military training. 93% of them had happy long-term memories, with 34% of them having more than one. But only less than 25% of them had a happy thought in their long-term memory about the waterfall. So yeah, waterfalls are not as powerful as all that.
That's going to be real interesting, because the fortress I built has a mist generator, and I have a lot of amenities missing, and they seem to somehow just be remembering the waterfall a lot. I wonder if that was changed. I wish there was a way I could export
Maybe.
what's going on here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have a look at the dwarfs in your fortress and see what their thoughts are on the waterfall, because this is 4704.
Okay.
It's an older version. Be interesting to see. Or whether it's just that because I've got all these amenities, it just kept pushing the waterfall out of their thoughts.
That's very possible, yeah. Because I have very little, not even a church or a tavern or anything, and yeah, I think the waterfall is really the only thing they're interested in.
So things that I found that had that caused them stress, and these were all promoted to core memory. Seeing death, experiencing miasma, experiencing trauma. They also didn't. I had less than 1% of my dwarfs were accosted by vermin. There was one dwarf that remembered. Oh yeah, there was one dwarf that was uneasy remembering becoming a parent.
That's a big commitment. That's hilarious.
Most of the dwarves, when they become a parent, are happy about it. But yeah, one dwarf didn't like that. One dwarf was very uneasy about it.
Can you imagine if your dwarf lost their baby and they were actually relieved? Like, remember losing their baby?
And here's something which is this is an example of memory clogging. I had one dwarf that was annoyed remembering drinking without a mug. Now, every dwarf in these fortresses had access to a mug as soon as we were in the first summer. So this is...
Never again.
This is from the first few weeks of the fortress's existence. I had a dwarf that was annoyed remembering drinking without a mug, and that's been lingering around in their long-term memory, and it's just been clogging their thoughts for several years.
My goodness.
I had one that was worried about dwelling on not being able to help somebody, so more beehives needed. And another one, frustrated remembering the lack of traditions. Now, that one, I'm not sure how to fix. I'm not sure what that actually relates to. But it's possible that if I had temples to specific deities and they could complete the rites to specific deities, then that might fix that, but I'm really not sure. And there was less than 1% of the dwarfs that I interrogated had this thought. So 2 dwarfs maximum out of 300.
I see. My initial thought when remembering lack of traditions or the like little things you read in legends like crossbow throwing tournaments or wrestling tournaments. Too bad we can't actually have them hold those.
Hang on. Chat says tradition is when justice is served. Oh, really? Interesting. Because I had a full justice system going. And I always made sure that every mandate was met, and every export ban was abided by as well. I managed to keep up with that in these fortresses.
This dwarf just wanted someone behind bars.
Yeah, maybe I just missed it. Maybe somebody caused trouble, and they were bothered that no one was arrested for it. That's possible.
It's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Other things that I found was by giving them a temple, and my first temple tends to be just an empty piece of ground where I've just put a zone down. 77% had long-term memories of wonder or enrapture from praying. 10% had negative long-term memories from being unable to pray. And some dwarfs had both positive and negative memories about praying. And all dwarfs had multiple positive and negative short-term thoughts about praying and not being able to pray. But I had the balance of positive to negative. I think that because all of them had positive and negative. The fact that they were given time to pray and they had somewhere to pray, and 77% of them had happy thoughts, but only 10% of them had negative thoughts, shows that there was I think this is showing that they weren't able to hold more than one thought in their short-term memory. So as long as they got to pray more than once a year, then the positive memory was wiping out their negative memory. Then another thing was performances. They all got time to watch performances, and they all had multiple short-term memories, and they really did. There was a lot of memories about performances and performing. Some of them were negative. About 5% of them were either bored or embarrassed. And only a few dwarfs had long-term memories about performances, but those long-term memories were always positive. So good to get performances to happen, all you need is a tavern. And if you don't want a tavern, if you don't want visitors to your fortress, just put down a tavern that is for your dwarfs only.
Does a larger tavern, I know it increases the dance floor, does that encourage them to dance more, or is it about the same?
Yeah, it does. Because when they decide to do a dance, if they've got a 10 by 10 space, then whichever dance they decide to do, they've definitely got space to do it. So you need a 10 by 10 space to be able to do all of the dances. And that, so you need no obstacles in the way, no statues or weapon traps or stockpiles. I think stockpiles also, I'm not sure actually about, especially now I'm not sure about stockpiles, but I always just make sure that I've got a 10 by 10 space. I like to have a big tavern, especially once I start getting visitors. I think there's less chances of a brawl breaking out if they're not crammed in.
Less people to hit if they're not around you.
And I've noticed in the past when I've gone into adventure mode and I've gone into very tightly crammed environments in NPC fortresses, if you've got a lot of people in a space, there's constant fights. Chat asks, does the short-term overwrite of similar memories also overwrite the age of the memory with respect to it getting put into long-term? I believe so, but I can't remember whether I've discovered that. Yeah, I think it did, but I don't think we got to the bottom of it. Because I'm not even 100% sure about the age of the memory when it goes to... That was something that Toady said, was that it was a year. But I saw a memory that had been promoted within... Here we go. So once a memory has remained in short-term slot for a year, that's when it attempts to be promoted to long-term. However, I'd found one that was promoted within 6 months.
So you're thinking maybe that 1 year timer is not reset when, say, if they ate a meal, but then they ate another meal that was better memory, that it replaced the first one.
Yeah.
And so in 6 months, the timer ran out and it was promoted to long-term.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure about whether, like, a dwarf is in the rain and has a low emotional response to it, and then they're out in the rain again and have a higher emotional response. Does that reset the timer or not? I don't know. It certainly keeps it in their memory.
I guess you'd have to watch and see what type of memory is stored there and if it gets replaced or not.
Yeah. But there's definitely something a little bit suspect, because what I spotted was a dwarf had given birth to their first child, and 6 months later that was in their long-term memory. So with that being the first time that they'd had a child, that couldn't be an overwrite.
Right.
Other things that I found? Arguments. Yeah. Almost all dwarfs were upset about getting into an argument. Most of them had multiple short-term memories about arguing, but only 3 dwarfs, that's about 1%, were angry remembering getting into an argument. And 1 dwarf was exhilarated remembering having an argument.
Probably because they won.
Yeah, that's probably the 1 dwarf that was making everybody else on.
Oh, there was one time I told him to shut his face, and I felt so good about it.
Things that didn't seem to matter, at least back then. Now, some of these things may have changed. These are things that were in their short-term memories but didn't get into their long-term memories. Being away from family, no one was bothered about that. Being away from friends, no one was bothered about that. Being sad at being separated from a loved one, no one was bothered about that. Not having decent meals, that's been fixed now, but no one was bothered about that. Being unable to craft an item, no one was bothered about that. Being unable to wonder. Now, I have spotted dwarfs in the Steam release where this has gotten to their long-term memory, so whether that was something that my fortresses for this experiment was dealing with, and or whether it's a change that's been made since, I don't know. Yeah, so now we've got an understanding of the memory system and the stress system. I'm going to tell you about dwarven therapy.
Surely there's some kind of surgery we can give these dwarves to feel better, right?
Unable to wonder sounds like an unmet intellectual need. It's unable to wander, and plant gathering is supposed to fix that. Apparently, if you let your dwarves do some plant gathering, then that's counted as being able to wander.
Is it just like going to an area they haven't explored in a very long time?
You'd think so, but
like I maybe like wonder if gathering silk in the caves would also like work
maybe.
as gathering plants.
I've been given my dwarfs just some plant gathering spots and saying, go up there, go pick plants. Maybe that does the trick. A dwarf with wanderlust? What are they, an elf? But yes, the being unable to wander is the common thoughts on the matter is that you can sort that out by giving them some plant gathering. That's just anecdotal though. I haven't seen any evidence of that. But yeah, it's a common knowledge thing. But then so is the waterfall, solving all of your stress needs. Yeah, so recovering happy dwarfs. Now I tripped upon something by accident. Let me go up to my barracks. So I've already touched on like just how important military training is to dwarven happiness, and how if you give dwarves some military training, it's going to improve their moods because they learn things. They'll often come away with multiple short-term happy memories, and some of them are really strong, and they can get more than one into their long-term memory because they're unrelated. They'll improve one of their fighting skills, like wrestling or kicking or biting or striking or dodging. So there's a military skill that they can improve. They can also improve their observation or their teaching if they're either watching or leading a demonstration. They can improve their discipline through military trainings. That's a different skill that they're learning. And they also, once they're above the basic level, they'll start sparring. And it seems that sparring in particular fits into a different grouping. So takes up a different memory slot to the military skills that they're learning. And so what I found quite by accident, because I was taking unhappy dwarfs and putting them into military training, if you schedule a dwarf, let's see, this bunch here, that's where I've been putting my unhappy dwarfs. If you take an unhappy dwarf and put them in a squad that's set to train, give them some off-duty time as well, but give them lots of training time. So lots of training time and lots of off-duty time. And then on the barracks, don't allow them to train. Instead of going in training, they'll go and satisfy their needs. Whatever their normal job is, if their normal job is being a weaponsmith or a farmer, they'll cease to be a weaponsmith or a farmer and they'll be a soldier. But if they're not allowed to any barracks to train in and they're scheduled to train, then they'll spend their time satisfying needs instead. So they'll go and pray in temples. They'll if they need to socialize, they'll go to a tavern. If they need to learn something, they'll go to a library. So they'll hang out in either temples or they'll even go. They will sometimes go to the barracks and train, even though they're not supposed to. If military training is the thing they most need, it's unusual if they're scheduled to do it several times a year. But they'll the taverns, the temples, the libraries. They'll go hang out in those places. They'll hang out in their guild halls and they'll socialize. So yeah, mandatory milling about, indeed. Yep. So putting together a therapy squad and giving them maybe 6 months worth of training a year where they don't actually spend most of the time training. They still get some time to do meaningful work as well. Yeah, therapy squads are making squads with no barracks. Exactly. Yeah. The daily
it's like paid leave.
Yeah, exactly. You're putting them on forced leave, forced R&R. And that is a really powerful way to reduce their stress. Just make sure that they're away from corpses and rain and other stuff. Can those soldiers fight effectively, or is it only for good moods? I do that just for good moods, because if you've got an unhappy dwarf in a therapy squad, what you don't want to do is then have them experience trauma. Because if I'm putting them in a therapy squad, it's because their stress is already high. So I don't want them to experience trauma. I don't want them to see corpses. I want them away from all of that. So I separate those guys, like my stressed guys, away from my main military and put them in their own dedicated squad, and they never go onto the front line.
Perhaps I'm mistaken, but wasn't there a point, maybe this was an older version, where dwarves were actually unhappy about being drafted into the military?
There's nothing now about being drafted into the military.
Not now. They seem to actually want to be some militia training now.
Yeah, even the dwarfs that have no respect at all for military skills, they still get happy thoughts from sparring. So it seems that sparring is some sort of maybe a social activity rather than a military skill type thing.
Right.
It doesn't seem to fall under the military training banner or into that group. Yeah, so if you're trying to turn around your dwarfs, that's one way to do it. Now, something that is a bit more difficult to deal with is your children, because you can't put children into military training. And it's difficult to control where they go and what they do. So I've managed, apart from one child whose father decomposed, I've managed to get all of my children pretty happy. And I've found that this is a much bigger deal now that we've got chores. Now that children are capable of doing chores, I've had to change my approach with children quite a lot because I was getting an awful lot of unhappy children. And if I have a look now, I've got 2 ecstatic children, 3 ecstatic children.
Geez, Sal, why you got so happy children?
A happy child and not unhappy but a neutral child.
I'd say that's content.
Yeah, a content child, but they've come back from being very unhappy. But yeah, that was a specific thing. But of course, now that we've got chores, the kids are not playing make-believe quite so much. They're busy hauling. And so what I've done, I went to chores. It's under standing orders and chores. I say children can do chores, but they're not allowed to do burial anymore. Because the kids are harder to keep happy. I've stopped them from doing burial. That way they're not corpse hauling, because refuse hauling doesn't include hauling corpses, whereas burial includes hauling corpses to your stockpiles.
You're too soft on these kids. Carry your mother to her grave. It builds character.
Still allow them to do chores, but I don't allow them to do burials. I make sure they've got a nice room, just like any of the other dwarfs, and I give them some toys to play with. If I have a look at one of my happy children, let's have a look at Derp Excessive. You're a happy child. What are you happy about? Let's go down to his more recent thoughts. Enjoyment, remembering.
Legendary too.
Enjoyment, remembering playing with a toy boat. Blissful, remembering his fantastic bedroom. Satisfied. Oh, he's created an artifact recently as well. That'll help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blissful, remembering dining in a legendary dining room. So, bedroom, dining room, bedroom, dining room. He's put on a truly splendid item. So he's put on some good clothes. He's been happy watching a performance. But yes, giving them some toys to play with makes up for the fact that they can't do any meaningful work. We can see there's not much that can keep a child happy, but they can get just as unhappy about other things. Yeah, got caught in a snowstorm on his way in.
This child is walking on sunshine. They're so happy.
And something to remember is when you've got a baby, the moment that baby turns 1 year old, they're carried around by their mother until that point, and then at 1 year old, they're dropped. And they're naked. And at that point, they are at the most embarrassed that they will be in their life. So
that's hilarious.
You need to make sure that you've got something to cover their feet, something to cover their lower body, something to cover their upper body, and something to cover their hands. If you can get those 4 things, some gloves, a shirt, some trousers, and some socks, then they'll immediately go and get themselves dressed, and it'll deal with that embarrassment. So make sure that you've got some clothes for your kids, because if you're not making enough clothes for your fortress when those babies turn 1 year old, it's the one thing that's worse than having clothes rot off their body is being naked. Dwarves are very, very embarrassed about being naked. So, and every baby that grows to be a child will experience that if you don't have enough clothes in your fortress. So, So yeah, that's how I keep my dwarfs happy. Um, Russ,
I'm mesmerized by the amount of switches you have and levers.
oh, this is all
The-
part of how I keep my fortress safe without them having to be exposed to corpses.
Okay. I did see all those bridges as well, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I've because I'm in an area where there are 32 necromancer towers in the vicinity.
Jeez, crow. That's a lot.
Yeah, so I'm constantly under attack by zombies. And being attacked by the dead is worse than being attacked by a normal goblin or something.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So rather than have my people fight, I just bring the enemies in down the corridor and then crush them with drawbridges.
Give him the old Adam smash. I understand. Yeah.
And I've been working on a series of secondary tunnels for capturing things like titans, so that if I get a creature that I can't crush and that I can't catch in a cage trap, I can put them in a tunnel. And I make these nice long tunnels because I need to use something like a bait dog to attract them down the tunnel. And then close the doors while they're still in the tunnel. And then I'll wait until the next bunch of undead attack or something like that, and I'll release them on the undead.
Yeah.
Instead of using my drawbridges. And then get them back in a tunnel using my bait dogs. So yeah, I haven't had a titan or anything on this map yet. But that's my plan. I'm going to test it out and see if it works. I have caught titans in corridors before and sort of found my entranceways have been blocked up by holding creatures. So I thought I'd put in a set of purpose-made holding tunnels in this particular fortress.
That's very clever.
And then that way, my dwarfs should live their lives peacefully and not actually have to do any fighting until they're all fully armoured and weaponed up and well trained, and then I'll get them to fight off map. I don't want them to
when
do...
you decide.
Yeah. I don't really want them doing defensive fighting. I want them to do offensive fighting. I want to send them out in squads and get them raiding.
So is that the plan? Is
That's
to take
my
on
plan.
36 necromancer towers by
Indeed.
just sending raiding powers? Oh my god. That'd be amazing.
We'll see how this goes.
That'd be glorious. How many occupants are you looking at each tower? Does your world map let you know?
It should do.
I'm just curious of what kind of numbers you're going to be facing.
Now, of course, it only tells you the number of civilized population. It doesn't tell you...
Oh, like, yeah, experiments and whatnot.
Yeah. There's our fortress there. And let's see. So the nearest towers, we've got one there, about 10. But then it could be hundreds.
10, right.
Then there's a tower there, less than 10. Could be hundreds.
So many artifacts.
A tower there, because zombies don't count as civilized population.
Right. Ugh.
Less than
Could be bad.
less than 10 there.
I guess when it says less than 10, it could just be the single necromancer.
I mean, it could be. It could be that
Or their lovers and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. It could be that there isn't more there, but we'll have to see. I've got an elven tower there that we're at war with, despite me not being at war with the elves. So it must... And elves can't be necromancers. So
They can? Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious about what that is. But an elf can be a necromancer's experiment. So I'm wondering whether the necromancer was killed and an elven lieutenant's taken over or something. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in that tower. We'll find out by killing them all.
Right.
We'll
reading the legends later.
We'll inspect the corpses afterwards.
That's going to be real interesting.
That's a human tower with less than 10. Then there's a human tower with about 10. That's goblins. Well, it's humans in a goblin place. There's an elven tower there with about 40. Dwarven tower there with about 20. Down here, we've got a dwarven tower of about 10. Goblin tower of about 10. Human tower about 10. Dwarven tower about 10.
Just low amounts of population just taking over these towers.
Yeah, but how many are there really?
Right. Yeah. I keep forgetting.
But yeah, I'm gonna get my army together and eventually we'll go out and we'll start wiping out some of those. My intention is to hopefully to end up with a whole army full of necromancers. Because
I was wondering, because you have one necromancer, and I was wondering if they had written any books or anything like that.
So not yet. I haven't got any writing materials set up in my library yet, but I'm gonna. What I've found is if you've got a handful of necromancers in your army, that's a bad thing. But if you've got an army full of necromancers, are unstoppable.
They're all undead.
Yeah. Because they'll see their comrades slain and then they'll bring their comrades back. And although sometimes when they bring back a sentient creature, sometimes that sentient creature will be aligned to evil. Yeah. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll be aligned with the necromancer. And if they do it often enough, you end up with a bigger army coming back than you had going with you.
Wow.
So, a full... And I've defeated the circus using an army of necromancers.
It may be highly ineffective, but could you use like the risen undead as a vampire detector if they won't attack a vampire? Or are vampires even considered undead?
I suppose you could, but detecting vampires are quite easy in the Steam version because they've got a kind of a green skin.
Yeah, they look very sickly.
Very, very visible these days. I don't have any in this fortress to show anybody, but a lot more easy to detect. Mm-hmm. So, Russ, do you fancy showing us your fortress?
Sure. When you contacted me to be on here, I had no fortress, so I worked on one for 2 days. And I gave myself a few challenges that I've never tried before to make it a little bit more interesting.
Cool. Let me know when you're ready. There we go. Let me pull your screen over. Okay. Oh, so let's have a fortress tour first, Russ.
All right. Well, welcome to Silvery Sands. This is a white sand desert I was looking for. It has no trees and a single river going through it. My plan here was when I first showed up was I was going to try to make everything out of glass, but I found out that producing glass blocks is actually very laborious. So some of it, most of it is green glass and a giant green cube, while most of it is clay stone. So another challenge I wanted to do is I wanted to make everything above ground. So I guess when you first walk in here, we have our mine, which goes down just a few layers. But I normally just try to let all the dwarves mine out what they can. I don't like cutting things out in huge swaths, but I love all the little different... I say that, and then the next floor is definitely just a huge swath of rock cut out. But a lot of the mining I just want to leave underground.
Yeah.
And when you first walk in, as I mentioned before, I try to set up my own waterfall mist generator, which is our bottleneck into the fortress here.
Aha, so they all walk through the mist generator.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these doors, I can bar them off easily and then force them through. But as we go through, up north here, this is all our kilns for making our glass blocks. Luckily, I didn't know this because I said before I never used glass as a material for building a huge fortress, but sand is infinite, and that is wonderful. All you need is a bag, fill it with sand, and then a little bit of charcoal, and you are on your way to making all the glass blocks you want. It is just very time consuming because instead of 4 blocks, you end up with 1 block at a time. Another interesting, strange thing, I guess, quirk about this fortress is going upstairs. I only have 12 bedrooms, and none of them are assigned to anyone, nor are they a barracks. And our population is still at 87, with a lot of my dwarves not being too miffed about anything.
Yeah, they're all. You've got quite a lot of happy dwarfs there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Also, another strange quirk is I don't brew any beer or drink. We do have 11 drink that I just traded from the humans, but a lot of the time my drinks have been 0, and my happiness has still been quite high. It's kind of a bit of an anomaly. The only real amenities they have is the mist generator. We have a nice, I guess, a decently sized dining room. And then I tried to add as many wells as possible, but it seems to be making the dwarves quite happy.
Yeah.
This is all food production where I do have a still where I just don't brew anything. Most of it, the food production, and we do have a few, our prepared food is not that much. It's mainly just biscuits and a few stews. But they seem to be quite happy. Actually, we have no prepared meals. Couldn't tell you what's going on here. But then we just have it capped off. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
And so then we go over to here. This is where our military, I just have them baking out in the sun of the desert and training constantly. I have a melee unit and also a marksman's unit. That's really all I need at the moment. Or at least I thought I did. We have all our smelters here. Luckily, I guess now with the Steam release, it's a lot easier finding coal than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so just having a supply of coal is really how I get all my fuel going instead of using any trees, because in this desert we have no trees. I just trade for wood to build beds. But luckily it seems like 12 beds have been enough so far. This is armor storage up here. And then we have our metalworking, and that's essentially it. The only other amenity besides the mist generator, the dining room, is this guild hall we have for farmers, and everyone just seems very, very happy. And so far, this has been a 4-year fort. I guess down the way we also have some. This is where all our fishing, our mussel shells go to, and I make crafts out of them, just amulets, bracelets, the usual. Just out of shells. I don't have any elves that visit me, so there's really no reason for me to be cautious or anything like that. But so far, that's silvery sand.
Can we have a look at some of the thoughts and memories of some of your dwarfs? I'm curious what they're thinking about.
Okay. I'm not sure who to choose right now. Let's just choose one at random. Why not? All right, here's one that's a static, my bone carver. Do you want to see their memories or just their recent thoughts?
Both. So, relieved to being near a waterfall, embarrassed after sleeping without a proper room, bored of having an intellectual discussion.
Yeah, they're very not taken care of. I've neglected these dwarves terribly.
Adoration, remembering becoming a parent. Oops.
Clicked it away. Choose another one.
Yeah. Delighted being near a waterfall. Fondness talking with an acquaintance. Nothing after seeing a buzzard's dead body. Satisfied after teaching growing. So that's in the guild hall. Wonder after learning about growing. Fondness talking with a friend, and fondness remembering making a friend. Relieved to have his punishment delayed. Probably so. A mandate.
I think a mandate was ignored.
Yeah. Let's have a look at his memories. So, uneasy dwelling upon drinking water without a well. That'll be in your first year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess their first year being here.
Yeah. Delighted remembering being near a waterfall. Interested remembering a fine paved road. Satisfied remembering creating an artifact. Satisfied remembering improving observation. Afraid, reliving, experiencing trauma. Interested, remembering a fine furnace. And relieved, remembering having his punishment delayed. And fondness, remembering making a friend.
Funny thing about the autumn of 103 is I'm sure this is going to be around 40 other dwarves feeling the same thing, as a giant wandered upon my settlement and I had no military to speak of, so I recruited 40 dwarves to go attack them, and for 2 months strength they were just punching this giant in the head, and everyone was just watching this amazing demonstration of how to punch a giant in the head for 2 months. Dwarves were so tired afterwards, but they did it. They got him.
Can we have a look at one of your dwarves who's been here a long time?
Sure. I know the manager has been here forever. You want to see their memories, or?
Yeah, let's have a look at the memories.
Sure.
Oh, also created an artifact.
Yeah.
So intellectual
I
discussion.
assume making an artifact is a big boost to like their mood all the way.
Content, remembering being near a waterfall. Satisfied, remembering improving appraisal. Interested, remembering a fine furnace. Fondness, remembering a new romance. That's gone into their core memory. Interested, remembering having an intellectual discussion. Content, remembering being near a waterfall. Satisfied, remembering producing a masterwork. So satisfied, remembering producing a masterwork is not the artifact. That just means it's just a masterwork. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interested, remembering her own fine table. So you've got a nice table in a manager's office.
I suppose so, yeah.
Interested, remembering having an intellectual discussion. Content, remembering being near a waterfall. Satisfied, remembering mastering observation. So that's part of their military training, I'm guessing.
The autumn of 103, punching that giant.
Yeah. Happy, remembering the acceptance of a petition for the guild hall of the Crystalline Hall. So that's your farmers' guild. And interested, remembering a fine paved road. What's your road made out of?
Claystone.
I wonder why they're so fascinated with that claystone road.
There's so many of them. I'm not sure. They just think that it's great. There's one that should be rough. Yeah, this is a rough one here. But the other ones are all just made of clay. Or, I mean, regular blocks. I was hoping they were going to be more interested in the glass, but
apparently not. Yeah.
Of course, it's probably most likely I'm not assigning them any rooms that they're not interested whatsoever.
So what about your military dwarfs? What are their thoughts?
Okay, so I guess my Mark's dwarves were probably they're the longest, so let's take a look at them.
Let's have a look at their memories. Yeah, so lots of thoughts about remembering military training, as you'd expect. Satisfied, remembering teaching dodging. Pleasure, remembering a sparring session. Satisfied, remembering mastering observation. So that the observation comes from either watching people teach something in a guild hall or watching somebody teach something in the barracks.
Okay. Because that was the thing, is after the giant incident, everyone was legendary observation. They're just so happy about it all.
What sort of changes have they had to their personality?
Great question. Do we see that under traits, values, preference?
I'm thinking, oh, there you go. It's under the traits, right down the bottom there. He doesn't really care about anything anymore.
Oh, he sure doesn't.
Yeah. So, what's his mood at the moment? You have to go look him up under the character to see what is this smiley face.
Oh, what's a smiley face? Sure. With the hammer dwarves and whatnot, they're generally fairly content, I guess. They're not ecstatic, but a lot of them are pretty happy with it. This one's pretty unhappy.
Yeah, he doesn't really care about anything anymore.
Yeah.
Mastering observation, improving observation. Teaching, striking. But it's not caring about anything anymore. So I know there's 3 levels to that. I asked Tarn about how the combat hardness system worked, like this battle hardening. And what he said was that there's a very old piece of code. It predates the stress system. It measures the combat hardness value of a dwarf, and it's a tricky thing to track because it's not recorded anywhere. Even when we had dwarf therapists, there was no way to pull it out of dwarf therapists to find out where they were up to on their battle hardness.
Interesting.
And he said that the battle hardness increases as they see, and to quote him, guts and stuff. They have to see sentient creatures die. So so things like killing cats and dogs and things. I know there was lots of designs for like the puppy fountain and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh, yes. I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah. They, at least in theory, I don't know whether it used to be different, but certainly the way that Tarn described it, don't actually work now, because they've got to be sentient creatures.
Yeah. Because I would assume your butcher would become the most hardened character of your entire fortress if it was on anything. Yeah.
And eventually it leads them to being completely immune to all stress. They just won't feel anything when they see corpses and things. And the maximum state doesn't really care about anything anymore.
Huh.
So yeah, you've so with
maxed out his hardness.
Yeah. So with your other dwarfs, the ones that are not in constant military training, do they still feel things?
I would assume so. Let me see which ones are the most upset. Which happen to be 2 dwarven children. I'm curious why. Let's see. What about this socializing stoneworker?
In his personality, she
also doesn't
really care about anything anymore. Wow. So that's without any... afraid to relive in trauma. So maybe it's happened then when they were beating the...
Yeah, I imagine so, yeah.
Ah.
We're literally going dwarf therapist on my dwarves. Finding the root issues.
Indeed. So despite all of these negative thoughts, she's just not... And the negative and the positive thoughts, she's just not feeling anything anymore.
It's quite interesting.
Indeed.
Despite them all feeling nothing, there is something they'll probably feel, and I imagine it's fear. Because one feature I didn't tell you about this fortress is... let's see here. We have a friend here who decided to show up, and I'm pretty sure my dwarves are doomed because I have no steel.
Oh dear. Yes, and it doesn't feel anything while in conflict.
All right, so yeah, it's just a bunch of apathetic creatures going off each other, so it'll be fine.
Oh wow. Yeah, so I'm surprised that how long did it take to kill the giant? So
2 months of punching.
I see. So it must have just been that constant time, because I've never managed to achieve not feeling anything anymore. And I was wondering whether it was something that Whenever when I was trying to get this effect in my dwarfs, they were all fully armored with great tools, like great weapons, and I would send them into battle against like a handful of goblins or something. They kill them very quickly. So maybe what I actually like to get that effect, what I would have needed to do was to get them to all like dogpile on without having wonderful weapons that they could all use
being
to
lethal about it.
Yeah. Huh, interested. Yeah, so that dwarven child hasn't reached... Oh, she's getting used to tragedy, so she's getting there.
What has been so wrong? Nobody's died. The only casualties in my fortress have been like 4 people. What tragedy.
That's the
Just
first
no bed.
level. Because there's 3 levels of this combat hardness. The first level being getting used to tragedy. The second level is becoming a hardened individual. And then the third level is not really feeling anything anymore.
And then once they reach that, I don't know. It's just, is it really an issue? Like, is it like I feel the humanity behind the doors, and I feel bad for them. But are they gonna like one day have like relive something and just snap and go on a berserking rampage? Should I be mindful of my dwarves not caring about anything anymore?
Well, this seems to overwrite the stress system. So if they don't feel anything anymore, then they shouldn't be able to go berserk. Well, unless they fail to produce an artifact.
Right, of
but
course.
Apart from that, that's why they're not experiencing stress in your fortress. It's because they just don't care about anything anymore.
You see one giant die, your life is just coasting from then on out.
And I'm not sure how long that sticks for, whether that's a permanent thing or whether that's something that will eventually die off, because it is independent of the stress system. And I know the stress system tends towards neutral, whether positive or negative.
To zero.
Yeah. It'll always creep back towards 0. The speed of which it goes back to 0 is affected by how calm or anxious your dwarf is. But yeah, I don't know with the combat hardness whether it drains.
It's quite interesting. I had no idea.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, chat saying you've broken them.
All of them, yeah.
But a very interesting experience.
I imagine living in a glass fortress in the desert probably is hell. Just all the light beams just being magnified all the time. No privacy. Probably terrible.
That's quite fascinating. So what kinds of changes to personalities have your dwarves gone through?
How would I go about
Just have a look.
that?
Yeah, anything that shows up as pink under their traits.
Oh, I see. It's the same dwarf. A nervous wreck after drinking without a well in the year 102. Understandable, dwarf. Understandable.
So what seems to be happening here? They're not getting changes to their personality because they just don't care about anything anymore. So even though we're being told that they're having memories, it would have obviously nothing's getting through to their core memory. Yeah, apart from like, so I presume that these are. Oh, well, your dwarven child. Yeah. Got a sibling in the
Yeah.
year 102. That probably predates your child reaching that point of not caring about anything anymore.
Strengthening after being caught in the rain.
But very few of your dwarfs have had any core memory changes.
Yeah, it seems like it. I guess that's really the benefit of having your dwarves be happy, because you have these interesting changes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just robots, which I suppose that does reflect. That checks.
Yeah, doesn't care about anything anymore. She's having... So do you remember what year it was that you fought the giant?
103 in autumn.
Ah. So yes, so the personality changes we've seen so far all predate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. All happening in the year 102. After the giant incident, everyone just went dead emotionally.
Mm.
It seems like it. Who knew such things existed?
Yeah.
You did.
Well, I wasn't sure how, because I've never reached the stage of not caring about anything anymore. So I wasn't sure how that would interact with the core memory. Like, I knew that it overwrote the stress system so that it would stop your dwarfs from reaching a point of like, they wouldn't be able to go berserk. They wouldn't be able to become excessively stressed. But oh dear, this dwarf suffered the travesty of art defacement. What did you do, Russ?
I'm pretty sure this dwarf had baked a masterpiece biscuit and a buzzard had stolen it.
Oh.
And so his life was ruined. Or I guess he learned some patience. He's slow to anger now.
Yeah. I'm interested in comparing that to some of my dwarfs. Do you mind if I just take you off screen for a moment?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, go for it.
You can keep yours up. I'll just move your screen over to there. Let's have a look at some of my dwarfs, because I don't think any of my dwarfs
don't care, or they're not apathetic. They care.
Oh, no, I lie. Ozone doesn't really care about anything anymore.
Because besides the giant incident, there's really nothing that should have been this traumatic for dwarves to instantly not care, unless they're a lot more fragile than we're led to believe.
Indeed. Or is this something she doesn't really care about anything anymore? Is this something that's significantly changed recently? He doesn't really care about anything anymore.
Most of your children are ecstatic too.
Yeah, my dwarfs haven't experienced any combat apart from a handful of them that fought some monkeys. Wasn't exactly...
Which I don't think would break a dwarf.
Yeah, she doesn't care about anything anymore. He doesn't care about anything anymore. So this seems to have become quite a common thing. So I tried and didn't succeed in all fortresses to be able to reach this state. And now...
What about your earliest dwarves? Do they have, can maybe you also track when they stopped caring?
Yeah, let's see if we can work that out. My chief miner is one of my starting dwarfs.
So So potentially we're looking at an event after 5:02.
And we've got a 508 there.
Okay. Yeah, they've been here for a minute.
Yeah, this is an old fortress. We are in the 10th year here.
Nice.
She doesn't really care about anything anymore.
What are happening to our dwarves?
Yeah, what's happening to our dwarfs? What happened to them? So we've seen a year ago somebody had a personality change. Jack of all trades, you're my unhappiest dwarf at the moment. You don't care about anything anymore. You had trauma in 508. That was when you gelded a dog that bit you. But the dog bit him because he was gelding him.
Right. I mean, I'd bite him too, to be honest.
Yeah. Ooh. So, yeah, I'm curious about this, whether this old battle hardness is something that just happens after a period of time now.
Right. How do we soften these dwarves?
Yeah. But, I mean, he's... In summer 509, he was panicking, reliving the attack. I am curious. I'm just going to let this tick for a moment and see what kind of... Oh, he's storing an item. He's not going to get any thoughts about that. Uneasy, lonely. So we're seeing him having thoughts. Let's find somebody else. I mean, I'm wondering whether that old battle hardness thing something's changed, and this is in the Steam update. This is not sooner than that. Because
I suppose a good control would be seeing what happens when a new migrant arrives and see how fast they turn into not caring.
Yeah. It's a shame I'm so late on in the year, because I could just bring some migrants in straight away. Tulia doesn't care about anything anymore. I mean, yeah, she also had the problem with her father decaying.
Right.
It's one of the newer dwarfs. Let's have a look at one of my older dwarfs again. My carpenter. It doesn't care about anything. Experienced trauma in 508. The only thing that happened in 508 was
the gelding.
The gelding. Yeah, it wasn't. There was a couple of them involved. I did a whole bunch of gelding in 508.
You don't think gelding the action itself is traumatic to dwarves, is it? Like they watch it happen, they're like, "Oh Jesus!"
No, I don't think so. I think it's that I got them to geld the war dogs, and they all got a bit.
And then they attacked.
Yeah. Let's
Quite
just
interesting.
follow this dwarf around for a little bit and see what kind of thoughts he's having.
So far, the only dwarf we've seen was my child dwarf that said they're getting used to tragedy. But everyone else doesn't seem to care anymore.
Yeah, it's not gonna get any thoughts about pasturing an animal. Let's get this carpenter to do something. I'll pop upstairs and I'll ask him to make some beds for me. I'm just wondering if there's anything else I actually want. I'll tell you what, make me some wheelbarrows.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah, I'll need wheelbarrows for something at some point. We've got some around the fortress, but let's get him doing some meaningful work and see what he thinks about it. I'll follow you. I need to sort out my pigs. I've got pigs running all over the place because the pig room's too small for the amount of pigs I've got.
Mm-hmm. Do pigs root around? You don't have to feed them, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, he's going to make his wooden wheelbarrow. He's just gone and got some wood. Oh, he's just produced a masterwork wheelbarrow.
Surely that'll make him feel something.
Yes, satisfied with his work.
This whole talk about memories, though, is really like opened my eyes to it, because normally when I look at my dwarves, I normally have like 1 or 2 out of the 100 and 200 dwarves that are always unhappy, and I just imagine they were the depressives that exist in society. But apparently they're just having some really bad experiences and some bad checks, and ending up with really bad memories.
I mean, Tarn did say that he felt as though it was reasonable to have like maybe 1% of your dwarfs to be unrecoverable.
Because I mean, it'd be unreasonable if everyone was happy.
Yeah. As we get up to late autumn, just one sec, there's something I need to do in my fortress. Just seeing which doors I've got open and closed at the moment. Because winter is training season for them.
Of course.
They'll stop work in a moment. So I'm just going to prepare for winter. I'm going to close my far northeast door. Because if I get something like a bunch of monkeys walking in now, that'll upset my training schedule. There we go. Okay, so we are shut up for winter. We're not expecting traders for 3 months. So now I'll allow everybody to train. I did take somebody out of one of my squads. I can't remember which squad they were in.
Why did you remove them? Were they being naughty?
Kinda.
Oh, okay.
I needed to put Jack of all trades, the unhappy Gelder, into a therapy squad. So because my squads are all a bit full at the moment, I took somebody out of squad 2. It was Sod 2. There you go. You can go into that squad now. Yeah. And then they'll just start training them when the time comes. Right, where did I leave the carpenter? Let's keep an eye on you.
Must not be feeling anything because making masterpieces is just mundane for them.
Hmm.
Another masterpiece created by me, the greatest carpenter.
Oh, we got a strange mood. I'll check that out in a second. Oh dear. Ian Eck in chat is just pointing out that Sod 2 is actually Ian Eck's child. And is saying, Sel, did you just enlist my child in the army? How dare!
I've said it's a great honor.
I've got mine set to autosave at the end of every season.
That's fair.
Oh look, he's passionate, remembering talking with his spouse.
Filled with emotion.
Indeed. Well, he's going to go into military training any moment, so be interesting to see what happens to his mood. He's one of the orange faces. So we'll see if his mood improves by doing a bit of military training. I'll just need to make sure that whoever's got the strange mood, make sure that they've got what they need. Another masterpiece. Throw it on the pile. Back to work. Yeah, indeed. So I know a few things have changed that were surprises to us that we weren't warned about. Oh, here's the person in the strange mood. It's Bluck. He's a weaponsmith, so yeah, he's just going to clean the forge downstairs. Right, let's see who's going to come and do some military training. And see what their thoughts are on military training. Ah, okay, Jack of all trades. Yes, so he's one of my unhappy dwarfs. Let's see what your thoughts are. He's leading a spear demonstration. Satisfied after teaching spear.
You mentioned it when you were explaining it, but having a negative feeling from being away from family too long actually doesn't negatively impact them too much?
No, I never saw that get into anybody's
okay.
long term at all.
Okay. So it's most likely weighted pretty weakly then, or you could assume that.
Yeah, yeah. He's wonder about learning errors in cranks. Interested after reading errors in cranks. Interested after reading The Wizard's Guide to Daylight in the Seasons. And wonder after learning The Wizard's Guide to Daylights and Seasons. So this is a dwarf that's in a therapy squad. So that means that there's about 4 months in the year when he's drafted to do military training, but he doesn't have anywhere where he can train. And so because he's a soldier without anywhere where he can train, he'll go and hang out in the library and the temple.
The amenities areas.
Yeah, just go and use the amenities, indeed.
I really like knowing that trick now, because I've definitely had that kind of issue. Or I've also wondered why when I have monster slayers show up and I have the bottom of my caves like barred off, I always wondered why they went to the temple and just prayed nonstop, but now it makes sense they're doing the same thing these guys are doing.
He's felt pleasure after a sparring session. Now he's organising an armour demonstration. That's really good. So their armour skills affect how fast they can move while they're wearing armour. Yeah, Imic points out that family absence does take up a memory slot. Yeah, short-term memory slot, which may help or hinder overall, given that there's fewer slots to overwrite and therefore fewer chances a stronger memory is removed. He's leading a kicking demonstration. He's satisfied about that.
I know a lot of Dwarf Fortress, of course, is text-based, so it's left up to your imagination and interpretation of what is going on and what can be seen. One of my favorite things is to imagine like cage size. It only takes up one tile, but so does a rock or anything like that. So you can imagine the cage is very tiny, filled with 50 puppies, or you can imagine it's like a giant pen.
Yeah,
actually, you know, the puppies actually have space.
Okay, he's leading another armour demonstration. Satisfied about that. What are you off to do now, Drink? Now, I noticed he didn't go to the dining room. I'm not sure if dwarfs, when they are in military training, scheduled to train. If they're hungry, they'll go eat. But I don't think they go and eat in a dining room. What do the different shades of purple mean in recent thoughts? So, if it says that they're remembering, it'll also pop up under their long-term memories. And that's significant. It means that they... Actually, why isn't... Oh, how long ago was that? Exhilarated remembering having an intellectual discussion.
508. Autumn? Oh.
That's more recent. Interested, remembering reading Errors and Cranks. Oh, yeah, here we go. He's remembered reading Errors and Cranks. And he's remembered making a friend. So I think the colour of the emotion is probably reflective of the strength.
As in the darker color compared to the teal color of satisfied?
I think so.
You think that'd be the middle ground? If blissful, it'd probably be the highest, and then satisfied would be like the lower end of a positive?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because blissful after sleeping in a fantastic bedroom is quite a strong one. But it's shown at the same level as satisfied at work. And euphoric due to inebriation is one that isn't taken into account at all. Toady took out the effect of being euphoric due to inebriation.
Oh, I see. But the flaw of text is still there, essentially.
Yeah.
I get you.
Basically, if being euphoric due to inebriation had an effect, you just end up with a fortress that was full of very happy drunken dwarfs.
Right, yeah. Until someone throws a punch.
So he's got pleasure from his sparring session. I'm curious to see if this improves his mood at all. Or whether the fact that he doesn't feel anything now has kind of locked his mood in place.
Right. So I definitely have dwarves, or have had dwarves, consistently, where they'll become depressed or negatively affected and then never recover. Even regardless if I give them, I guess, the amenities they want. Which they really don't need a whole lot. It's just really church, tavern, place to sleep. Things like you've already mentioned.
But I think something that's noticeable that I think catch a lot of new players unawares is the unmet needs are not really that important compared to their thoughts. It's their thoughts that affect their moods, unless they start having thoughts about their unmet needs.
Mm-hmm. So it's just more important to listen to what they're thinking than looking at their unmet needs. Okay. This guy's an expert fighter.
He is. Let's have a look at how his skills are doing, actually. Legendary Observer, Great Discipline, Expert Fighter, Proficient Striker. He used to be... I can't remember whether he was in the Spear Dwarf Squad or the Axe Dwarf Squad. But because I moved him into my therapy squad doesn't have any weapons or armor.
Mm-hmm.
So he's although he's not wearing armor at the moment, he's still got armor skills. So he can teach other people how to wear armor effectively. But he'll have been picking up on his wrestling skills, wrestling and dodging and biting and kicking.
Mm-hmm. He dabbles in a little bit of biting.
Yeah, unmet needs are yellow lights to a bad thoughts red light. Except they're only a subset. So there's so much more in their thoughts and memories than in their needs. Like, no dwarf needs to be attacked. Okay, somebody's mood's improved. Let's see if that's Jack of all trades or whether that is my necromancer.
Hoping it's Jack.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, actually, everybody's mood's improved.
Have others gone down then?
So jack of all trades and my necromancer have become, their stress has been reduced.
Ah.
Let's have a look. So Selphia, 3 Lear we know about. 3 Lear was traumatized by his dad rotting. Selphia, what about you? Let's have a look at you. So first of all, your personality. So you allegedly don't care about anything anymore. You were upset about the rain, but you became happy about being a parent. We know that's in your past. Yeah, everyone's complaining about a lack of decent meals. I think I've just got them on biscuits. Satisfied about teaching kicking, satisfied about learning about armor and improving armor, teaching dodging. Now she's remembering teaching kicking. Oh, now she's frustrated dwelling upon being unable to wander for too long. Yeah, I should probably get them all doing a bit of plant gathering. She's exhilarated remembering a sparring session. She's been teaching kicking again. She really likes her kicking, doesn't she?
Teaches an aerobics class.
I think Selphia is another one that's in my therapy squad.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the name of my therapy squad.
Traders.
Oh, yeah. Traders, indeed. Yeah, so she is one of the people who she's had more downtime, more enforced R&R.
Mm-hmm.
So currently more shameless, currently more rude, more fearless, less private. That sort of thing I would expect to see when she doesn't have a room. And she does have a room.
Do you think she'd be more happy about her situation?
Yeah, has she eaten? She's remembering sleeping in her great bedroom. Blissful remembering sleeping in a great bedroom. Yeah, we can see how for her, being unable to wander is something that's been bothering her for a while. So
really bothering her.
Yeah, Autumn 509 there. It's not the first time she's been dwelling upon that. Autumn 506.
It's like she's bombarded elsewise with very positive memories.
Yeah.
These 2 times here is really bringing her down to mid.
Summer 503. And being caught in the rain, of course.
Really wants to wander, though.
She really does. Now, is that something in her personality? She talks to inanimate objects when she's thinking. I do that. Nothing that stands out particularly. that would suggest that she's the kind of dwarf that wants to wander.
Right. In fact, she dreams of raising a family.
Yeah.
Sounds like settling down.
Indeed. Which is something she's been able to do. Well, what we could do...
She had a family and now she wants to leave? Come on. Surely she wants to take them with her.
I'll say that only the selected can go gather plants. And we'll have a look for the ones who really want to. What were your thoughts? Eating a good meal as well. Let's sort that out. I'll change up my work orders for meals. I have got them preparing fine meals now.
Sal, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
In your dining room, on the west side of that room, there's a single one tile room. What is that isolation chamber?
Oh, that's my bin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll...
Like, what do dwarves do to be put there? What are they...
All right, we'll prepare 200 lavish meals. As long as you've got less than... Actually, what we'll do, we'll say 100. You can check that monthly. You don't need to check that daily. But I'll turn that down to 100. Okay, so if it drops below 100, make another 100. So we should bob between 99 and 200 or thereabouts. And I'll remove the prepare fine meals. I could set somebody up as a dedicated cook so that we can skill up our cooks. I don't know who's doing most of it. Oh, this room here. Oh, yeah, I know, I see. Yeah, that room there. That is... So I've got a trench around the outside of my fortress.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that... Because I knew that we had all kinds of necromancers around us, and there's no trigger for a necromancer attacking you. It was one of those things where it could happen any time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I decided to do, I had grazing animals. What I decided to do to get my animals safe as quickly as possible, I decided to dig a trench with an overhang.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got 3 levels at the top that overhang, and then I've got 3 levels, well, 2 levels down that are cut into the rock. And then down here there was a whole load of fluxstone and iron ore, stuff like that I wanted to get my hands on. So I cut a hole in the side of the wall so that they could get out here to drag all of that stuff in. And then just walled it back in afterwards.
And you got some bees living out there.
Mm. Yeah, those bees just spawn down there. I've got a hive up the top. Occasionally stinging people. We could do with more people being stung.
That is so hilarious. I had no idea that happened. I've been stung. Oh god, let's get you to the hospital quick.
Yeah.
I'm a hero.
So who's doing most of the cooking at the moment? Just wait and see if we can find out who comes. Who's left a glove in there? We might be able to... Can I see who owns the glove?
Check the prints.
Yeah. I was thinking whoever dropped the glove might be someone who's doing the cooking.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it doesn't seem to be owned. No one's claiming ownership of it. So I haven't actually noticed anybody cooking. So I'm just wondering who's got the best skill to be a cook. Right, let's add a new work detail. We'll put cooking and brewing as 2 skills, so that we share. No, I'll just do cooking for the moment, because we could do with churning out some masterwork meals. Okay, so you're going to be a chef. I might add some more into that. And I'll say only the selected do it. Right, Selfair and my trader and Neverlate. Right, you 3. You're going to be my cooks. Selfair, you are a chef and a plant gatherer. I'm going to say you only do that for the moment. My trader is a miner and a chef. Let me have a look at what your thoughts are. I might set you to only do that as well. Oh, someone has been stung by a bee. Oh, it was a llama.
Darn, wasted.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I had best just check. That's a thought. I've got someone in a strange mood.
Oh my gosh, you got crundles? You're lucky. I love crundles. I think they're cute.
You're demanding something. What have you got? You've got logs? Cut gems. I'm not sure how long she's been down here demanding cut gems. Rough gems and logs. Yeah, so she's after her cut gems. One moment. That's something I kind of need to take care of. Who's my jeweler?
Man, I'm not in any way a modder for this game, but I just thought of an amazing mod that would add text to speech to when you're listening to a dwarf's demands, so they just actually just read it aloud.
Indeed. I've got a task for cutting gems, a managed task, but I think we'll see if we can just get somebody to do that urgently. We'll see if that pops up on somebody on the task list anyway. Cut gems. Okay, has anyone taken the task? Yes. My tactician's taken the task. Okay. Let's hope you get it fast enough. because she's been 6 weeks already creating that artifact.
How did you know?
Because it was just as everybody started their military training that...
Oh, okay.
And that was early winter. And now it's midwinter.
So yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah. Now, thankfully, she's had to get a whole bunch of stuff. And I've got this weird thing going on in this fortress where I haven't been able to find the magma sea. I've only been able
really?
to... Yeah, I've only been able to find some pockets of magma. And because there's such a small amount of magma, I haven't pumped it to the surface. Or I haven't pumped it higher up. It's all just really low down. So she'll have spent a long time walking up and down.
Right, yeah.
There we go. We've got some cut gems. Let's make sure she's left. She has.
Excellent.
Good job I thought about that. I'll just let him cut a few more in case he wants more than... Or she wants more than one, I think. Okay, that's... Oh no, you're cutting gems, okay. Strange mood persons should be making their way up.
When they ask for cut gems, will what are they called? Cabochons? Will they work as substitute?
Yeah, any cut gems will do. I'm not sure
Or
whether...
cut glass?
I'm not sure about cut glass or cut stone.
Okay.
I can't remember whether that's ever worked for me in the past.
Yeah, me either. Usually I just have the gems on hand. They're everywhere.
But yeah, that was nearly a disaster. Usually I've got a pile of cut gems around the place, but my traders came with a whole bunch of nice stuff, like huge quantities of books, and so I decided to buy everything, and sold all of my cut gems to pay for it. Of course, that was only a couple of weeks ago, so yeah.
What do you sell mainly? What's your main export nowadays?
These days, I to the elves, I mostly just sell cut gems, and trade them for exotic animals and cages. I buy cages off my off the elves because they've got the lightest weight cages.
Really?
Yeah, their cages are made out of wood. So when you've got a mechanic going to reload a trap, the wooden cages are a lot lighter than the dwarven cages, which are made out of metal.
Wait, but I normally make my dwarves make wooden cages.
Oh, when I'm normally just buy my cages.
Right.
So when you buy an animal from a dwarf, because I don't usually.
Because I know elves, yeah, they bring exotic animals.
Yeah,
that you can't get anywhere else, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. If I buy animals from the dwarfs, they always come in metal cages. And
okay.
if I buy them from elves, they come in wooden cages. So yeah, I buy the exotic animals, and but I tend to buy most of my wood, and I don't make that many wooden items like beds, wheelbarrows, buckets. Even splints and crutches. If I've got an early metalworking industry, then I'll make those out of metal as well.
Really? Okay.
And then just buy in most, like things like cages, I'll just buy in.
Gotcha. I guess it's just because I've played so long, my defense was always, I was always afraid of military because it felt like it was always very complex on how to do it. Eventually I learned how to do it the old way.
Yeah.
But before then, I always used cage traps for my defense. So I'd make, just long tunnels of 50 cage traps just to catch an entire squadron of goblins to throw them into a pit. But I would just make my own cages. It's all out of wood.
Let's have a look and see what's going on down there. Oh, she's working furiously. Okay, she's happy now. Good. Indeed.
I feel like if a dwarf that's in a fey mood was nearing breaking and they finally get their ingredients, everyone should get a buff and be relieved.
Oh, a steel spear. Very nice.
From the spear dwarf.
Yeah. Which she claims as a personal treasure. That I'm going to put in a weapon trap somewhere. Just setting some of these copper chains to be smelted as well. I want masterwork copper chains for my newly built prison.
Curious thing, if a dwarf were to use that and then name it, would it override the artifact's name?
Oh, I don't know. I used to give my military the artifact weapons and armor, but I've had so many stolen out of the hands and literally off the bum of my dwarfs.
Terrible.
Yeah. I had my military leader once. I'd given him some artifact greaves. Mm-hmm. Artifact steel greaves, and they were stolen from him while he was wearing them. When I interrogated him, it turned out he'd been, I can't remember if it was bribed or blackmailed, but he'd been corrupted into handing them over. So yeah, artifact weapons go in a weapon trap. Artifact armor gets sold. They don't mind me selling their artifacts.
I can only now picture that scene where he's training and whoever comes to steal them just starts taking on. He's like, oh no, my pants are being stolen. Uh-oh. they just run off with them. Oh guys, you won't believe it.
I'm being asked about, I said I don't put tables in my tavern. Do I put chairs? And no, I don't. Let me find my tavern.
I'm now probably not going to put any tables or chairs in my tavern because I always imagined they were kind of necessary so that the tavern master or bartender could serve drinks to strangers, but I guess if it's not necessary.
Yeah. This is my tavern.
It's just a dance spot.
Yeah, my chief miner's hanging out there at the moment. Would like to practice a craft. Yeah, you've been mining forever, haven't you? I might still have you as a dedicated miner, which I don't really need anymore. You're allowed to do other things now. You're fine. You're a nature lover, so I need to keep you locked. Yeah, everybody else gets to do a bit of something, so my chief miner can go do some crafts. Nobody hanging around in my library at the moment. I've got lots of books for them. I was hoping we'd pick up an accidental Secrets of Life and Death, but we didn't. We did get the Secrets Anatomy. Huh?
Have you ever had one in your library?
Oh, not in this fortress, but I have in other fortresses.
Okay. I've never had a necromancer book. Always been interested, though.
Yeah, I picked one up from a caravan once, and it wasn't obvious that's what it was.
Oh, I see.
Because
You're
we
just kind of
used
buying in bulk.
Yeah, we used to be able to look at the books before we decided whether or not to buy them. These
Right.
days, I just buy everything.
Mm-hmm.
The world of government. It concerns government, its forms and recommendations. The writing overflows with sadness. Yet it is
Literally 1984.
yet it is throughout ornate and refined. Right, where should we put that artifact? I've got plenty of weapon traps with artifact weapons around the place. This tends to be where the weapon traps actually get used, is at this point.
Evident by the splattering of blood.
Yeah, indeed. And it's usually just monkeys. What were you? An iron mace. So I could replace that one with the steel spear and put that mace somewhere else. Well, let's have a look at this steel spear.
I bet it menaces with spikes somewhere.
I bet it does. Stoked Common, the crowded blockade. This is a steel spear. All crafts dwarf ship is of the highest quality. It's studded with steel, decorated with goblin cap and encircled with bands of alpaca wood and square, brilliant cut white jades. This object menaces with spikes of horse leather and onyx. On the item is an image of Dewsome Diamond Dash, the dwarf, and dwarfs in alpaca wood. Dewsome Diamond Dash is surrounded by the dwarfs. The artwork relates to the ascension of the dwarf, Dewsome Diamond Dash, to the position of Queen of the Swift Helm, that's our civilization, in the year 11. On the item is an image of a bitter melon vine in sheep's wool. I'm guessing she likes bitter melon vine.
I'm hoping so.
We
This
can
was
check.
in the year 11. Oh, you mean the creator, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
creator. Indeed. It was. Look. Let's see. You're going to be one of my happy dwarfs for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've just created an artifact. There you are. So, what's your preferences? Anhydrite, steel, green zircon, the colour dark olive, earrings, splints, giant hyenas for their coordinated hunting, the sight of the tenebrous luxury. When possible, she prefers to consume strawberry wine. Huh, okay. No, nothing about... So, melons...
Horse leather or the melons, or onyx. Hates slugs, though. Would not want
Indeed.
any slug eye biscuits.
This time of year, I get animals just wandering all around the fortress because 2/3 of my fortress are in military training.
Mm-hmm.
But we can see that their moods are changing despite most of them not feeling anything anymore.
It's true.
Oh, we got a forgotten beast downstairs.
Is that safe?
Yeah, my caverns are sealed.
Oh, okay.
The forgotten beast Zospu has come. A great quadruped composed of peat. It has an enormous shell and it undulates rhythmically. Beware its deadly spittle.
Oh no, not the peat.
We've got to take a quick look at it. Oh, there we go. Great quadruped. Let's just follow you for a moment.
I remember one of my first forgotten beasts was composed of snow, and he's shattered in one hit.
Oh, we've got a forgotten beast fight.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, the
I
other
like kaiju battles.
The other forgotten beast is suffering a little. This is fever, deathy Cicilol. 5 a gill burned, but that one is seriously injured already. This is my, I think, 17th forgotten beast.
Lordy.
In these caverns.
And 10 years.
So let's have a look at this one. Oh, ability to stand lost. That's not looking good. So Fiver is a huge 3-eyed stegosaurid. It has a round shell and it is slavering. Its eyes glow fuchsia. Its sky blue scales are small and close set. Beware its noxious secretions. It's quite durable.
He sounded cool. He sounded cool.
It's quite durable, very agile, rarely sick, strong, quick to heal, and slow to tire. But its 4th toe on its left front foot is mangled beyond recognition. Its 3rd toe on its right rear foot is mangled beyond recognition. Its 4th toe on its right front foot is mangled beyond recognition. And its 4th toe on its right rear foot is broken. Let's see, other toes smashed open, broken, smashed open, broken, smashed open, broken, broken, smashed open, broken, smashed open. Oh, its right true rib is mangled beyond recognition. Its lower spine is broken. Oh dear.
How long has this one been down here?
I don't know, years.
Yeah, I getcha.
Its left rear foot is dented, and its right rear leg is dented. Yeah, and it's got so many scars. Look at all these scars.
Something I noticed about Forgotten Beasts, I guess maybe I never noticed before Steam release, is how old they are. And how a lot of them are hundreds of years before history is recorded.
Indeed. From
It's
a
crazy.
time before time.
Yeah.
So my bets would be on our new one.
Think so? Even though it's made of pea?
I think so. Let me just bring you up. Let's have a look at your health as well. Lost its vision. Lots of creatures down here have lost their vision. A great quadruped composed of peat. It has an enormous shell and it undulates rhythmically. Beware its deadly spittle. It's weak, flimsy and slow to heal. Well, let's see who wins.
I'm putting my money on the stegosaurid.
Oh. Okay. Fiver, despite having lost the ability to move, appears to be moving. Easily dealt with that peat monster.
I can only imagine, since he can't move his arms, it's like he's just rolling on his side and just took him out. Disgusted by the miasma.
Yeah, ability to stand lost, so must just be crawling. Yeah, still moving around at a fair speed.
Do we get battle reports for Forgotten Beasts fighting one another?
We do, but it doesn't. It just tells us the Forgotten Beast did this, the Forgotten Beast did the other Forgotten Beast.
Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah, it's not accurate.
Oh no, the Flying Zospu's Forgotten Beast extract. So yeah, when it's the extract, it tells us.
Ah, okay.
Strikes Fiver in the shell. The Forgotten Beast kicked the Forgotten Beast in the left rear leg with its left rear foot, bruising the scale. And then the Forgotten Beast scratches the Forgotten Beast in the lower body, and the severed part sails off in an arc.
Being made of dirt was my only weakness.
Yeah, I was thinking that because this one couldn't move, I was thinking that
I was also that I was going to agree with you.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
Amazing.
Right, that shouldn't have affected our dwarves because they know nothing of it.
Lucky for them, less trauma.
Indeed.
That they know not about the horrors down below their feet.
They're a bit worried about being unable to take it easy for so long. What I'm going to do, I'm going to force them to have some downtime, I think. So I've not done this for a while with anybody except my therapy squad. Right, everybody who's supposed to be training now, go take some downtime. We'll just kick them all out of there and let them go get some social time in. They'll finish what they're doing. So you think that your bronze colossus is gonna end your fort, don't you?
Absolutely.
Because I was wondering if you fancied showing that on stream, but
Sure.
are you sure?
Absolutely, yeah. I know my military is not going to do well.
Chat.
They maybe were set up like 2-3 months before this showed up.
Chat, we've got about 20 minutes left. Do you want to see Russ's military fighting his bronze colossus?
I've never survived a bronze colossus attack. Though this is only my second one. So I'm assuming this is not going to go well either.
Yeah, chat is. Oh,
Alright.
can you slow down the FPS?
How do I do such a thing?
Okay, go to your settings. Go to game. Scroll right the way down near the bottom. You'll see bit further. Game frames per second.
Okay.
Change that down to about 30. In fact, because we want to see the battle, try changing it to about 25.
Okay.
We can always change it again if that's too slow. And then press enter to make sure it sticks.
Oh, I did not. Let me check, make sure it's saved or not. Okay.
Yeah,
we're
it
good.
did.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna send in everything I have. I could make more squads, but I'm just gonna send in these. Let's see, 50 dwarves. None of them very trained. It'll be very interesting. Guess we'll follow the colossus to see what happens. When this guy showed up, I immediately ran to the wiki to see what I would need to do, and it says nothing but steel is probably going to do well.
Oh, dear.
And I only have iron, so not going to end well, I assume. Oh, bolts are being shot now.
Oh, there we go. They're all piling on. A gigantic magic statue made of bronze and bent on mayhem.
Oop,
Oh, he's
some
got a
dents.
dent.
Oh, the cat has joined the fray. No. Oh, 2 dead dwarves. I already see it.
Oh dear.
3. 1 a hammer dwarf. There is a human caravan here, so they might jump in if he gets close enough.
Yeah, you might have done well to station.
Lure them over there.
Yeah.
That's okay. This was a fun challenge to do. I've never set up in the desert. I've never tried to make a glass fortress. It was really neat. See, when they get him all surrounded like that, I think there's hope. But then I look over at his description of damage, and he's doing nothing's happening. Dwarves are just dying and throwing up. Oof.
Oh dear.
These lands are going to be haunted soon enough. I wonder who got the couple of dents on this guy.
Yeah.
They're heroes enough. All these squads were full, so... Well, there's only one missing there. One from that squad. So it's looking like we've lost 10 out of the 40 dwarfs so far. More are surely dying. Oh, there was a dwarven child in the mix. Terrible. Oh, one just got launched. Look at that blood trail.
So
Jeez. The bronze colossus is satisfied with improving his kick. Can they learn skills? That's a good question. This guy is agile, tough, and high stamina, and doesn't feel anything about this.
What's his thoughts?
Just not feeling a damn thing.
Hmm. Yeah, still just those 2 dents.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure he's just more dodging everything than anything.
Yeah.
I guess the attacks also glance off them. Ooh, it's jumping away. That's terrifying to imagine.
Yeah, extremely agile.
Yeah. Just bodies everywhere. Ugh. Dwarves are just tired and depressed and everything's terrible. This is the worst summer of their life. And they'll never forget Malachite. The summer of Malachite. Caravan's still here? Oh, they left. Probably smart of them.
Probably in the opposite direction as well.
Absolutely, yeah. He's just picking them off now.
Yeah. Imagine that fight together with a necromancer. Chad's pointing out.
Oh, I'd love that.
Now notice your stress is going up despite... I mean, unsurprisingly. Despite your dwarfs not feeling anything anymore.
Yeah, they're very unhappy about the situation.
Yeah. I think something's changed about that old
A lot of not
stress
feeling anything.
mechanics. Yeah.
But definitely now
Definitely
feeling
feeling
lonely.
something.
But yeah. Terrified. Ugh, and dead. Ugh, there they are. Just dropping. Next time I'll have to get steel a lot faster. I had no flux stone, and I ran into aquifers that I couldn't get through quick enough. At least that's my excuse. Ugh. No mercy.
Oh, so now it's just your unarmored dwarfs.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. He kicked him and charged him down. Oh my god. My gosh.
Oh, child's
This game's
dead.
beautifully brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, 0 angry dwarfs.
Once someone's really happy about living here. My planter. Oh, little do they know.
Indeed.
Oh, horrible. Uh-oh. Oh, there go teeth flying. I will spare my dwarves the brutality and retire in peace.
And one of the chats just pointed out that one of your dwarfs is really happy.
He was really happy.
Must have really hated his neighbours. Watching them
His
die is
rival was
great.
finally smashed. Yeah. Watching from inside the glass fortress. So happy it's not them.
Lots of real estate just opened up. That's why he's so happy.
God, it's so bloody.
Oh dear. Well, that was fascinating. Thank you for saving your the downfall of your
Demise.
fortress. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I knew that was an event I couldn't give up, especially after spending 2 days building the fortress.
All right. I'll just move your game over to the side there. Oh, chat's saying that they're some people in chat wanted to see your fortress wither.
Oh, darn, yeah. They should have let it run. But now that Colossus owns that fortress, all his now.
Yeah. No, cage traps don't work on bronze colossi.
Oh, really?
I don't believe.
Hmm.
Oh, chat. Have we got time? We might have. Could you have a quick look in Legends mode at the story of the Bronze Colossus? Oh, they do get caught in cage traps. Yeah, I thought it was only if they got knocked into one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we don't know the name of the Bronze Colossus, but if we go have a look...
Kaus?
If we have a look at your site, we should see the name of the Colossus right at the end of the history of your site.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's been some interesting experimentation going on there. Something seems to have changed about the old battle hardness code, because both you and I are showing dwarves that are battle hardened, even though my dwarves have got nothing to battle harden them against. But they're both showing stress. So, Cabu Cudgel combats the influential Yells was a bronze colossus. It was the only one of its kind. Cabu was associated with war, strength, and metals. So he started off settling in the Tressed Blizzard, then began wandering the everlasting hills, the hill of joy, the everlasting hills, and the hills of gliding. Then
Before stopping at my fortress.
Yeah, your fortress being Silvery Sands.
And he decided to destroy everyone.
Oh, wow. So, such a lot of your dwarfs died of suffocation? I guess because
really?
he...
Was like collapsing their lungs with his punches and strikes and all that.
Is he hitting them with a piece of armor?
With a dog leather armor. Did he pick that up? Because we were making dog leather armor. Let's see. He struck them down, and then I guess he started hitting them with someone's dog leather armor.
I guess it's the one who he struck down. Maybe he got the dog leather armor off the one that he struck down.
Yeah, he killed 3 dwarves and a cat before. Yeah.
Yeah, so largely minding his own business until came across. So your fortress is the first time that he's had any...
He's ever interacted with the sentient race. And this is what happens. Well, I guess he's the enemy of a lot of other related entities.
Chatter suggesting that he wrapped the armor around his fist like knuckle wraps.
He said this makes my punches feel softer. Ugh, so many dead dwarves.
Hot Goldfish says, I like how Sal tells every story as if it's a bedtime story, even when it's about dozens of dwarfs getting smushed.
Tamed the polar bears. Oh wait, that's an elf. Never mind. This is what happened in the Trust Blizzard. Never mind.
Ah. And then in the Everlasting Hills, we've got a Twilight Horror and a Minotaur.
Twilight Horror.
The only one of her kind, a large, scaly humanoid with a curling trunk and it shambles sluggishly. Its clear scales are blocky and set far apart. Now you will know why you fear the night. That is probably a night troll.
I see.
So she'll abduct people and turn them into night trolls to be her mate.
Ooh, it's terrifying. What's this Minotaur been up to? Killing elves.
Yeah, so if I got a bronze colossus in my fortress, or wandering onto my bit of the map, that's what my side corridors are for. Things like this. So that
I do know they can break bridges, though. I'm not sure if they break them when they get smashed on them or if they are building destroyers.
They'll break a bridge while it's down. They can't break the bridge while it's raised.
I see.
And they wouldn't normally attack a bridge if they've got another target. So how I would get it into a corridor is by lowering the bridges and opening a pathway to one of my sets of guard dogs so that it doesn't stop to destroy the bridge. It goes and tries to get to a guard dog. And then before it got to the dog, I would slam closed all of the bridges.
And then trap it inside.
Yeah, and just hope that it didn't destroy the bridges, otherwise we'd be in real trouble.
Oh yeah, for real. Hopefully so that it works out.
Otherwise we'd just be turtling until probably get attacked by some necromancers, bring in some lieutenants with them. They might be able to sort it out. The necromancers who are turning up at my fortress, they are bringing lieutenants who wave their hands, and at the wave of a hand it sends whichever creature they wave their hand at will go flying.
Really?
and it slams their body into whatever they hit.
A wall and stuff like that. Yeah.
Be interested to see how a bronze colossus stands up to those guys. I've just been smushing them with.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah. Can you look up bronze colossuses? Colossi? No, it just brings up nicknames of bronze in it.
But anyway, Russ, we are reaching the end of the stream.
Oh, well, it was great being here. I had a great time.
Good fun having you. Let me just find out for chat who we've got. Sorry, I was so engrossed. Usually I have this to hand. I was so engrossed in what was going on. I didn't have the schedule up. Let's see. So on Saturday, we have at 5 p.m. Eastern, which is 10 p.m. UTC. I'm going to be joined by Nucrium and Minty Jones. Nucrium is a very experienced player of Dwarf Fortress. I'm sure many of you know Nuke. Minty Jones is a long-term streamer, makes YouTube videos, and he's only recently got into Dwarf Fortress. I think he's got something like 30 or 40 hours under his belt at this point. Very much bitten by it. So we're going to be talking about everything to do with food and brewing and farming. It's going to be more aimed at newer players, but I'm sure, as with everything, that there'll be something for us to all learn. So at this point, I think we shall go find somebody who we can raid. Let's see who's streaming. I'll pass on the love to another Dwarf Fortress player.
Man, I love Dwarf Fortress. I'm not just saying that. I actually learned a lot about memories and stress today. And that's the best thing about Dwarf Fortress. There's always these little nook and crannies just of nuggets of knowledge that you get to learn if you just, dig into it.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. We have... Great Padinsky. I don't think we've raided Great Padinsky before. Let me just go over to the KitFox linked computer.
The one with all the power.
There we go. Yes, I'm me on one computer and KitFox on another. And yes,
splitting up the resources.
If anybody wants to find Russ Money, you can find Russ on Twitch. You're most days of the week, aren't you, Russ?
Yeah. Really, I stream nearly every day except for like Tuesdays, but I will be streaming tomorrow.
Oh, me too. I don't usually stream on Tuesdays, but I'm streaming tomorrow as well. I guess we're streaming the same thing too. And if you want to find me, you find me as Salford Sal on Twitch. And I stream Dwarf Fortress absolutely guaranteed on a Wednesday and a Friday at the moment, because I'm teaching a new player, Honey Plays, how to play Dwarf Fortress, which is a lot of fun. Oh, do a shout out, people are saying. Don't make us choose between you, says Galactic. But for now, we are going to go and say hello to Great Padinsky. Thank you for watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Good night.